Chapter 2028. Hearing her question, Hua Jin suddenly fell silent. He looked at Yun Shishir with a complicated gaze. There were too many inexplicable emotions in his eyes. Suddenly, his lips curled into a smile as he retracted his gaze and looked at Lin Shuya with gentle eyes. How is that possible? Xiaoya, you're the person I love the most. Yun Shishir was stunned. She looked at him in disbelief. After thinking for a while, she suddenly understood. This Lin Shuya. She was so arrogant and rude. Then, she looked at her attitude toward Hua Jin. Could it be that she's the rumored sugar daddy behind Hua Jin? Seeing how Hua Jin accommodated her in every way, her identity must not be simple. She could tell that Hua Jin was pretending to be deeply in love. No matter how good his acting was, he could fool Lin Shuya but not her. He was lying. What Yun Shishir did not know was that to Hua Jin, words of love were nothing. He pretended to be affectionate on the surface, but deep down, he was very cold. Yun Shishir looked at Hua Jin. However, he smiled gently and looked at Lin Shuya affectionately again. You know that I love you the most, but you still asked me such a question to test me. I'm very hurt. Lin Shuya's expression softened. She glanced at Yun Shishir arrogantly. Her expression was that of a victor, but it was self-evident. I don't like you being with other women. As Lin Shuya spoke, she pointed at Yun Shishir arrogantly and ordered, make her disappear from my sight. Xiaoya, immediately. Lin Shuya's voice was not loud, but her expression was very cold. Her tone was indisputable. Hua Jin bit his lip silently and grabbed the bedsheet tightly. He looked at Yun Shishir silently, but his gaze was slightly colder. Shishir, leave. His indifference made her heart ache for him. Yun Shishir knew that he was lying. At this moment, Hua Jin wished that she was the one who stayed by his side instead of Lin Shuya. But he was only pretending to be indifferent to protect her. Lin Shuya was probably not a simple character. Hua Jin was worried that he would hurt her, so he pretended to be so heartless. Lin Shuya cast a sidelong glance at her. Did you hear that? Hurry up and get lost. Don't be an eyesore. Ji Yuqi gently tugged at Yun Shishir's sleeve and kindly reminded her, Shishir, let's go. Seeing Yun Shishir's indifferent expression, Ji Yuqi hardened her heart and whispered into her ear through gritted teeth, you leaving is really for Hua Jin's sake. Lin Shuya is not someone you can afford to offend. If you really care about Hua Jin, leave this place quickly. Yun Shishir glanced at her and pursed her lips, but she still did not take a step forward. Ji Yuqi almost dragged her away forcefully. Hua Jin watched her leave without blinking. He clutched the bedsheet tightly, his heart aching. Why? Can't bear to leave her? Lin Shuya asked coldly. Hua Jin took a deep breath and leaned back on the bed. His gaze was extremely empty. Xiaoya, I don't have any improper thoughts about her. No improper thoughts. Lin Shuya snorted coldly and sat down by the bed. She said expressionlessly, the way you look at her is different. Do you think I can't tell? Don't think too much. Chapter 2029. Hua Jin's lips suddenly curled into a smile. He quietly turned his head and gently caressed her face. I'm yours. Lin Shuya smiled sweetly and kissed him gently on the lips. After a few lingering kisses, she pressed her lips against his and murmured softly, what should I do? I want to be with you forever. She had a perverted obsession and possessiveness towards him. She loved him. She loved him deeply. However, no matter how she looked at it, she could not be with him legitimately. She was born into a noble family. As for her future husband, her family would only choose an outstanding man from an even more noble family to be her fiancé. And this person would definitely not be the lowly Hua Jin. In the entertainment industry, an actor's identity was despised by the real rich. Moreover, the Lin family had already investigated Hua Jin's background thoroughly. Hence, Lin Shuya's father flew into a rage many times and asked her to cut off all ties with Hua Jin. However, Lin Shuya refused to comply. She cried and threw tantrums. She even said something as absurd as, "I can get engaged to anyone you want, but I will never be separated from him." Mr. Lin could not persuade her, and the father and daughter were still in a deadlock. However, Hua Jin felt physically and mentally exhausted. He did not love Lin Shuya. The so-called love was just an act. He was an actor. Since he was a teenager, he had already wandered around the world of fame and fortune. Meeting Lin Shuya was both his fortune and misfortune. Fortunately, she brought him away from the sea of bitterness. Unfortunately, because of her, he fell into hell once again. In order to survive, he could say all kinds of hypocritical words to her. Acting was a piece of cake for him. Of course, he had thought of leaving her. However, was it possible? At the entrance of the hospital, Ji Yuqi looked at her apologetically and sighed. Sure, I'm sorry. I can only ask you to return to the capital first. Hua Jin may stay in Sea City for a few more days. Miss Shuya is here. You have to keep a distance from Hua Jin. Yun Shishi's expression was complicated, but she couldn't say a word. She was upset, not because she had been mercilessly chased away by Hua Jin, but because she felt sorry for him. Especially when she saw Hua Jin forcing a smile and saying insincere words to make Lin Shuya happy in order to protect her, she felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. Why did he have to be so petty? Could it be that he was being controlled by her? Why didn't he leave her? Yun Shishi hated him for failing to live up to expectations. She remembered him saying, if he wasn't afraid of living, why would he be afraid of death? She had once asked him, if you're not even afraid of hell, what's there to be afraid of if you're trying so hard to live? But Hua Jin said, there is a kind of living that is more frightening than dying. She didn't understand. However, Hua Jin said, that's why I'm so envious of you. Sure, you're the darling of the heavens. There are some things that you might not be able to understand. Some people can do whatever they want when they're alive. Some people are struggling at death's door, just like the Walking Dead. Everyone's fate is different. After a pause, he smiled bitterly. To me, being able to face the person I like in an open and above-board manner is a luxurious thing. Yun Shishi's mood was very complicated. She said to Ji Yuqi, take good care of Hua Jin. I will. Ji Yuqi called a taxi for her and sent her to the airport. When Qin Zhou received the call, he rushed to the airport. Ji Yuqi had already booked the tickets. Why are you in such a hurry? Chapter 2030. With just a few words, the manager understood what she meant. Let's go back to the capital. There were still a lot of things he was in a hurry to deal with. If not for Yun Shishi's insistence on staying behind to look after Hua Jin, he would have rushed back to the capital long ago. On the plane, Yun Shishi suddenly asked, Qin Zhou, who's Xiaoya? Lin Shuya. You know her? Ha, she's a well-known name. The manager looked at her. Why? Have you met her face to face? Yes. Yun Shishi's face was cold. She's a detestable woman. The manager's lips curled into a smile. Don't be rash and do something stupid. Why? He answered truthfully, the Lin family is incomparable to the Song family. Even if the Lin family's threshold is flattened, it's still a level higher than the Song family. Although the old man from the Lin family is a founding father like the old man from the Song family, the power of the two families can't be compared. Song Enya's father is only a minister, while Lin Shuya's father holds an important position with military power. If it were the Qing dynasty, he would be equivalent to the commander of the Nine Gates. His influence is incomparable to the Song families. In other words, if the central government wants to deploy troops, they have to abide by the Lin family's wishes. He changed the topic and smiled. Still, you don't have to be afraid of her. Given your man's background, the Lin family will still make a detour when they see you. Yun Shishi, there are 4 prominent families in the capital, the Muse, the Gus, the Lins, and the Songs. These four families have deep ties with each other and have a lot of interests involved. The reason why I asked you to keep a distance from Hua Jin is that I don't want you to go against the Lins because of him. I understand. Yun Shushu replied faintly, then leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes to rest. It was already 3 in the afternoon by the time they reached the capital. Qin Zhou sent Yun Shushu home and hurried back to the company. Before he went back, he specially said, "Rest well for the next few days. I've applied for leave from the production team for you. Besides, your scenes are almost done, so you don't have to worry about the progress." "Alright. Let's have a good talk with President Mu." Yun Shushu suddenly stopped talking. When she got home, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were already looking forward to her arrival. Before they boarded the plane, Yun Shushu had already called home to inform her. Yu Yu excitedly grabbed Xiao Yichen and rushed to the supermarket to buy fish and meat. They planned to make a sumptuous dinner to reward their mother. Well, although Yu Yu was a boy, she was becoming more and more like a good wife and mother. As Xiao Yichen accompanied him to buy groceries, he thought to himself, when I get married in the future, I must use Yu Yu as my template. I must marry a wife as virtuous as Yu Yu. She was gentle, virtuous, and not only did she do all the housework, she was also very smart. If his wife was as smart as Yu Yu, he would not have to worry about their children's homework. While Yu Yu was picking groceries, Xiao Yichen had nothing else to do. So, he was thinking about something far away. If Yu Yu knew what Xiao Yichen was thinking, he would have shivered. "Mommy. You're finally willing to come back. I thought you didn't want Yu Yu anymore." Yu Yu threw himself into his mother's arms as he grumbled bitterly. Yun Shushu did not know whether to laugh or cry. How could that be? How could Mommy bear to not want Yu Yu? Then why are you only back now? Chapter 2031. Nope. Yun Shushu said guiltily, "Mommy and Daddy's relationship is very good." Then why are you gritting your teeth when you say, "very good"? Detective Yu narrowed his eyes and sensed something fishy. Yun Shushu felt even more guilty. When did I? Alright, I don't care about you. You're making me worry all day long. I'm going to cook. Yu Yu ran to the kitchen and started her grand plan. Yun Shushu sat on the sofa with Xiao Yichen and watched TV. Xiao Yichen watched military programs with great interest. She sat beside him and scrolled through Weibo on her phone. She hadn't scrolled through Weibo for a few days and didn't expect it to explode. Life was like a drama. The news about Lin Ji stealing the Best Actress award spread like wildfire. Under Huan Yu's influence, all the major media outlets published articles on their front pages, accusing Lin Ji of stealing the Best Actress award and the shady dealings behind it. Originally, the Best Actress award belonged to Yun Shushu, but the team behind Lin Ji had sinister intentions. They did not hesitate to use underhanded means to snatch the award that originally belonged to Yun Shushu. It was as though they were robbers. Recently, the crew of Lethal Beauty had been suffering because of this. Gu Xiaoyang turned pale with anger. Halfway through the filming of the drama, the female lead had such a scandal. He was worried that when the drama finished filming and entered the post-production stage, if the publicity wasn't good enough, he was afraid that the public would boycott it. If that happened, the ratings would flop and his reputation would be greatly affected. He had put in a lot of effort into this drama so that it could be a high-quality drama. However, if it flopped because of reasons other than quality, anyone would be upset. Gu Xiaoyang even went to Huan Yu to make a fuss. He went straight to Ji Lin and asked about the rumors online. On Weibo, Tieba, blogs, and all the major internet portals, the scandal of the Golden Eagle Festival was still published on the front page. This was obviously Huan Yu's intention to kick Lin Ji when she was down and trample her to death. Most importantly, Lin Ji was the female lead of Lethal Beauty, and Huan Yu had also invested a lot in the drama. Gu Xiaoyang immediately questioned, Huan Yu is publicizing Lin Ji's scandal. What if it affects the reputation of Lethal Beauty? He regretted it so much. He shouldn't have compromised and asked Lin Ji to be the female lead. If it was Yun Shusher, there wouldn't be so much trouble. Now, the netizens on Weibo had a lot of disgust towards Lin Ji. They even suggested that when Lethal Beauty was aired, they would boycott and never watch a movie with that bitch. Gu Xiaoyang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, Huan Yu's attitude. However, Ji Lin said lightly, if the TV series is good and attractive, how can the audience resist it? Are you sure? Gu Xiaoyang narrowed his eyes in disbelief. It's not like there hasn't been such a precedent. Previously, the A-lister Wen Zhang cheated on Yang Di after marriage and it was a big deal. After that, the audience boycotted all the dramas that Yang Di starred in. Now, a few years have passed and Yang Di is still not popular. Can you say that an artist's scandal doesn't affect the reputation of the drama? Chapter 2032. Gu Xiaoyang was speechless. With Shusher's identity as a victim and the fans she gained from The Green Apple, it's enough to support the show's ratings. Besides, other than Lin Ji, there are so many A-listers in the production team. What's there to be afraid of? What's more, the audience was just here to watch a good show and didn't mind blowing things up. We'll just treat it as a publicity stunt. This way, we'll have a hot topic and a gimmick. Huan Yu was very confident. The audience said they didn't want to watch it, but what about after it was aired? Now that everyone knew that Yun Shusher and Lin Ji were arch-enemies, the audience would be very interested to know what kind of TV series these two would star in. Huan Yu was also thinking from this perspective. Firstly, trampling on Lin Ji now would, in a sense, allow the production team of Lethal Beauty to ride on the hype. Secondly, because of this incident, Yun Shusher received a lot of attention. With this attention, the show would definitely be a hit. After all, the cat fight was so exciting, the show would be even more exciting. Ji Lin had been in the industry for many years and was very experienced. He had a good grasp of the audience's thoughts. Moreover, how many netizens would say they were boycotting the show in real life? How many of them would there be among the more than 1 billion people? It wasn't even worth mentioning. Most of them said they didn't want it, but their bodies were honest. Most of the audience for the show rarely went on Weibo. They only cared about the quality of the show and didn't care about anything else. It was fine as long as it looked good. This would only be beneficial to Yun Shusher. It was the best opportunity to improve her favorability. Missing out on a Best Actress and gaining reputation was not a loss. Gu Xiaoyang was rendered speechless. Ji Lin said, "Focus on your show." Then, he invited him to leave. However, Lin Ji's scandal was still very lively online. Lin Ji's side had already posted 5 statements and apologies, but Yun Shusher didn't say anything on Weibo. The netizens collectively didn't buy it. Yun Shusher was speechless as she scrolled through Weibo. It turned out that the feeling of being protected by fanatical fans. It was so complicated. On one hand, she was touched. On the other hand, she was helpless. Some of the brainless fans ran to Lin Ji's Weibo to curse and were banned by the system. They created accounts again, they came aggressively. Yun Shusher didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She opened her homepage and browsed through the comments left by the netizens. Suddenly, a comment caught her eye, "Mistress. Evil mistress. Only die-hard fans like you would like such a bitch. Do you know who Yun Shusher's backer is? Don't be fooled by her innocent and harmless appearance. She is the third party who has pushed out the fiancé of the Mu family's heir, Mu Wanru." Yun Shusher was shocked. Even though this netizen's comment section was full of criticism, Yun Shusher was still unsettled. Who was this person? How would she know about her relationship with Mu Yaja? In the industry, not many people knew about her relationship with Mu Yaja. Could it be that there was a mole? Who could it be? Could it be Lin Ji? Yun Shusher suspected that Lin Ji had used a fake identity to maliciously slander her. Forget it. What a clown. Yun Shusher was still in shock at the thought of Mu Wanru. After Mu Yaja rushed back to the capital, he had a short call with her. He only said a few words and didn't say anything else. However, Qin Zhou said that Mu Yazhe had returned to the capital early to deal with Song Enya's matter. Chapter 2033. Song Enya's bizarre disappearance had thrown the Song family into chaos. For some unknown reason, Song Enya had mysteriously disappeared without a trace. She did not know what had happened, either. After Yu Yu finished cooking, he saw Yun Shishir sitting there in a daze. He walked over and gently flicked her forehead. "Mommy, what are you thinking about?" Nothing." Yun Shishir pouted and rubbed her forehead. "It hurts. I see that you're in a daze. You don't look too happy." Yu Yu was meticulous and could tell at a glance that Yun Shishir was a little unhappy. Yun Shishir shook her head and did not say anything. In her heart, Yu Yu was just a child. What could he know? There was no need to affect a child's mood. Yu Yu sighed inwardly. It seemed that Daddy had made Mommy angry again. He felt at a loss. He knew very well that no matter how much he doted on Mommy, it could not compare to a gentle word from Daddy. He understood what his Mommy wanted. He could not give it to her. Moreover, as a junior, it was not appropriate for him to intervene in the matter between Daddy and Mommy. Intervening would only make things worse. It was better to let the two of them settle their own matters. Although he was unhappy, he could only pretend that he did not know. The little guy was young, but he was very perceptive. He only smiled and did not expose her. Instead, he said gently, "Mommy, let's eat. Daddy, that bad guy, is probably still busy in the company. Let's not wait for him. Has he been coming home very late these few days?" "Yes. I've been working overtime at the company to keep an eye on him. Don't worry, Daddy didn't go out to play." Yun Shishir was amused by Yu Yu's mischievous behavior. Little Yi Chen immediately testified from the side. "I'll prove it. Although Daddy comes home very late, he comes home every day to report." Yun Shishir laughed uncontrollably. "You two are smart." "Of course. Mommy isn't here, so we have to supervise Daddy." "Did he eat on time?" "No, there was one time when I went to the company to visit him. At 12:30 in the afternoon, he was still in a meeting. He seems to be very busy these days." Yun Shishir nodded. Suddenly, she picked up Xiao Yichen and said, "Let's not wait for him. Let's eat." "Yes." The dinner was very sumptuous. There was fish and meat, but not much. There were only 5 dishes and 1 soup. It was very exquisite. Yun Shishir didn't eat anything on the plane, so she was starving. She sat at the dining table and didn't care about her image. Yu Yu was dumbfounded at this sight. He scooped food for her as he watched her gorging herself. "Mommy, can't you at least pay attention to your image? Be more ladylike." Yu Yu pursed her lips and said tactfully, "You look like a refugee." Xiao Yichen added, "Ha! I'm already used to Mommy's table manners." Yun Shishir was speechless. She fell silent and glared at Xiao Yichen. "What's wrong? Do you dislike Mommy?" No. Xiao Yichen held back his laughter. "Mommy is beautiful no matter what. Why do I need to pay attention to my image in front of you?" After dinner, Yun Shishir insisted on washing the dishes herself. Yu Yu sat beside her on a stool and chatted with her. Xiao Yichen was assigned to walk the dog. He felt wronged, but when Yu Yu glared at him, the little guy obediently walked the dog out. The kitchen was silent for a moment. Chapter 2034. Yu Yu cupped his head and looked at her quietly. Suddenly, he said, "Mommy." Yu Yu wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he said nothing. "I'm just calling you. I've missed you for so many days." Yun Shishir's heart warmed. She bent down and kissed his forehead gently. "Mommy missed you too. You missed me, but I didn't say I would come back early." Yu Yu snorted proudly and kissed her cheek. Yun Shishir smiled when she saw his proud expression. She liked it very much. She liked seeing Yu Yu's adorable expression. He was like a little elf that made people want to dote on him. Halfway through, Yu Yu insisted on helping, but Yun Shishir refused. It was winter. Although the water was warm, Yun Shishir's heart still ached and she insisted on washing the dishes herself. Yu Yu had no choice but to give up. Mommy's hands are so beautiful. Yu Yu's heart aches for you when you wash the dishes so much. Yu Yu's heart aches for you when you wash the dishes. Oh, okay. I know that mommy loves Yu Yu. After washing the dishes, Xiao Yichen also walked the dogs home. She accompanied the two children to watch TV before coaxing them to bed. It was late at night. After washing up, she lay on the bed. However, she tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Outside the window, the night was quiet. However, the quieter it was, the more uneasy she felt. Would he come back tonight? She had not called him when she returned to the capital today. She felt that the two of them were in a cold war. Yun Shishir closed her eyes and suddenly felt sad. It was past midnight. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a car engine coming from afar. Then, she heard the car turn off in the garage. At that moment, she felt her heart clench. This situation seemed familiar. 7 years ago, it was also a night like this. She was arranged to stay in a villa near the sea, silently waiting for his arrival. It was also in such a dark night that she heard the car turn off in front of the villa. Then, she heard his steady footsteps getting closer and closer. At that time, she was so uneasy, not knowing what kind of man would appear in front of her. At this moment, he was just as nervous as before. Yun Shishir suddenly heard the sound of the door being pushed open. Along with the slight movement, he seemed to have walked into the living room and was resting on the sofa. She became increasingly uneasy. Every minute and every second felt as long as a century. He went home. At this time, she should be happily opening the door to welcome his return. But ever since they parted on bad terms, he felt a little awkward now. Yun Shishir covered herself with the quilt. It turned out that the Cold War was so tiring. She wanted to hug him tightly and pour out her heart, but she did not have the courage to do so. Mu Yaja did not know that she was back. He sat in the living room for a while, then went to the dining room. He poured a glass of water and drank it in one gulp. No matter how good the soundproofing was, she could still hear his footsteps in the living room in the silence. Then, she seemed to hear him walking towards the bedroom. Her heart was in her throat. Kacha! The door suddenly opened. The man was suddenly stunned for a moment. He looked at the bulging figure on the bed. She was back. Why didn't she tell him? Yun Shishir gritted her teeth and hid in the quilt. She did not dare to poke her head out and pretended to be asleep. She did not know how to face him. Chapter 2035. Hence, she could only pretend to be asleep to get out of this awkward situation. Mu Yaja turned around and went to the bathroom. The sound of running water seemed to indicate that he was washing up. After washing up, he took off his clothes, changed into his pajamas, and got onto the bed gently. The man's tall and lanky body gave her a great sense of security. Even though she didn't touch him, Yun Shishir could still feel that solid chest behind her. She shut her eyes tightly and didn't dare to open them. She pretended to be asleep and her breathing was calm. And he didn't seem to notice that she was awake. He thought that she was already asleep, so his movements were very careful, afraid that he would wake her up. Just when she thought that they were going to spend the entire night estranged, the man behind her suddenly intimately pressed against her. His body was very hot. It was unusually hot. Even through the coral fleece pajamas, she could still feel the burning temperature of his skin. Why was it so hot? While Yun Shishir was in a daze, she felt his gentle movements. The man gently hugged the back of her neck and casually reached out an arm to cushion her throat. Then, he gently and carefully pulled her body into his embrace. His other arm circled around her waist and trapped her in his embrace. Yun Shishir was so nervous that her body stiffened. She didn't dare to move. The man seemed to notice that her body was slightly stiff. He was a little surprised and thought that she was frozen. The temperature was extremely cold at night. Even though the heater was turned on in the room, her body had always been weak and she fell sick easily. He knew her well. Once the workload was slightly heavier, her body couldn't take it anymore. If she didn't take care of herself, she would fall sick. Muyaja hugged her closer, trying to warm her with his body's temperature. Yun Shishir still had her eyes closed and didn't dare to move. She was still a little angry with him. Hence, when he wanted to hug her to sleep, she didn't seem to want to cooperate at all. She deliberately acted awkward and pretended to talk in her sleep. Then, she pounced on the empty space on the other side of the bed. Muyaja helplessly curled his lips and hugged her waist to prevent her from moving. After tossing and turning for a long time, the man finally realized that something was wrong. The woman in his arms was not asleep at all. She was still awake, but she pretended to be asleep to deal with him. He could tell that she was still angry with him. Even if he deliberately tried to get close to her and curry favor, she didn't seem to buy it at all. She kept running to the other side, wanting nothing more than to get as far away from him as possible. Little idiot. Was she holding a grudge against him? In the darkness, Muyaja's black jade-like handsome eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at the woman in his arms who was pretending to be calm. It was obvious that he had seen through this fellow's awkward thoughts, but he didn't know what to do. He really didn't know what to do with this woman. After remaining silent for a while, he finally spoke. He's awake. Yun Shishir didn't say anything and didn't want to talk to him. She was angry, but because of him, she couldn't vent her anger. She could only hold it in and bear with it. She could only use this little trick to silently accuse him. Muyaja saw that she was ignoring him, but he wasn't angry. He lowered his head and gently kissed her forehead. Yun Shishir suddenly turned her face away and avoided him silently. She intentionally avoided him. Chapter 2036. The man fell silent again. Since you're awake, there's no need to pretend to be asleep. Despite his words, Yun Shishir remained indifferent with her eyes tightly shut. Little thing. She needed to be taught a lesson. With this thought in mind, the man leaned over slightly and gently covered her with half of his body. Since she was pretending to be asleep and unwilling to face him, he would make her wake up. His large palm reached under her clothes and traced her tender and smooth skin all the way up. His body was boiling hot, but his fingertips were slightly cold. When they brushed across her skin, it made her shiver uneasily. Yun Shishir suddenly grabbed his arm. In the darkness, she slowly opened her eyes. Under the moonlight outside the window, her pupils were like agate, shining with a glittering luster. You're finally willing to wake up. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile. Yun Shishir, however, asked coldly, why did you come back so late? I had a dinner with a few directors tonight. Yun Shishir asked again, why didn't you call me these past few days? He said calmly, you're angry. Yun Shishir felt a pang in her heart as tears welled up in her eyes. She widened her eyes and retorted, is this the reason? It sounds so pompous. Can you ignore me just because I'm angry? So you're giving me the cold shoulder? Muyaja was silent. She sucked in a deep breath of cold air before continuing. I admit that my tone was a little harsh that day, and it may have hurt you, but aren't you the same? Since she had already said this, she might as well vent all the unhappiness that had been buried in her heart for the past few days. Is this how you treated Song Enya before I showed up? When she was angry, or when she was being unreasonable, would you also give her the cold shoulder? Ignore her. Muyaja did not say anything and did not even give a basic explanation. Yun Shishir smiled coldly. It can't be like that. You can be patient and coax her, let her be arrogant and willful, but... From Song Enya's words, she learned that Muyaja's love for her was almost limitless. No matter how arrogant, willful, or unreasonable she was, he would tolerate it. But why? But he treated her like this. How unfair. She was his wife. Regardless of whether it was emotionally or nominally, she was his rightful wife. What grave mistake did she make that he had unscrupulously neglected her for so many days? She was restless and suspicious every day. She did not know what he was thinking. She did not return to the capital. On one hand, she wanted to take care of Hua Jin. On the other hand, she did not know how to face him when she returned to the capital. Yun Shishir endured the bitterness in her heart and asked word by word, "Am I not worthy of your love? Do you have to be so sarcastic? I just want to know if I'm more important to you or Song Enya." She asked stubbornly. She clearly knew the answer in her heart. Whether it was from Qin Zhou or those close to him, be it Lu Jinyu or Jiang Shen, all of them said that she was important to him. Still, she could not believe it and wanted to verify it personally from him. She could only be sure of the words coming out of his mouth. Why are you asking this question? Chapter 2037. Isn't it good for you to answer me when I ask? I want to know because I feel uneasy. I have a feeling that Song Enya is more important to you than I am. You can break your promise with me for her sake. You can indulge her and hurt me time and time again. What exactly is the reason for you to be so protective of her? If it were someone else who did this to me, you'd definitely get rid of them by hook or by crook. But Song Enya has crossed my bottom line time and time again, yet you still don't have a tough attitude. Is she really that important? So important that you can ignore my feelings? Her voice was calm, but the anxiety in her tone made him frown again. He pinched her cheeks and fiercely sealed her mouth with a kiss, trying to force her to calm down. Pressing his lips against hers, he asked in a deep voice, "Must you be so self-righteous and make assumptions about me?" Yun Shishir widened her eyes, but a line of tears fell from the corner of her eyes and landed on his arm. Her voice was trembling and hoarse as she broke down. "Other than making assumptions about you, what else can I do? You're not willing to tell me anything. Other than trying to figure out your psychological world, what else can I do?" Mu Yaja's eyes flashed fiercely as his heart was stung by her words. "No matter what it is, I like to tell you everything. No matter if it's happy, sad, agitated, or sad, I'm willing to tell you everything. But what about you? You're always silent and don't let me know anything. Do you know that I feel very lonely like this?" Mu Yaja was suddenly speechless. He was surrounded by a panic that he had never felt before. He did not know how to respond to her uneasiness. The only thing he could do was to hug her tightly, as if by pressing her head against his chest, she could hear his fiery heartbeat. He really wasn't good with words, and he wasn't good at expressing his love. "I love you," these mushy words of love, he said again and again in his heart, but at this moment, it was hard for him to say it. The only thing he could do was to hug her tightly, as if doing so would allow her to feel the warmth in his heart. It seemed that this was the only way to let her listen to his heartbeat so that there would be no suspicion of hypocrisy. But she wanted him to tell her his burning feelings. It was driving him crazy. He didn't know how to express it so that the words, "You're the most important," would have more power and weight. Yun Shishir buried her face in his chest, and her tears became more and more unrestrained. She recalled the despair she felt when she was on the verge of death on the top floor of the hotel in Sea City. It was like the end of the world. However, all of this was thanks to Song Enya. Her sixth sense had always been accurate. Even without any concrete evidence, she was certain that the Missy was behind all this. How could he understand her hatred for that Missy? What exactly does that Missy mean to you? What do I mean to you? Can you answer me? Mu Yaja hugged her, his heart aching. Just as Yun Shishir was feeling disheartened, the man suddenly said in a deep voice, "Her appearance once drove away the heaviest darkness in my life." Chapter 2038. She appeared with a face that was very similar to hers. "It's good to think of her when I see it. At least, she brought me out of that gloomy world." He was never willing to talk about this matter. It was because of that gloominess that he did not want to recall even for a second. In such a big family, every step was dangerous. All along, he and his mother had relied on each other. He was her support, and she was his support. But one day, they were separated by life and death. It was a despair that almost destroyed the world. It was Song Enya who held his hand and brought him away from that darkness. To her, it's gratitude. It's Gun Yenji. Then, what about me? Yun Shushu was extremely jealous. It turned out that Song Enya used to be so important to him. In his heart, she seemed irreplaceable. What about her? What kind of place did she hold in his heart? Mu Yaja hugged her shoulders tightly. At this moment, this man, who had always been tall and steady, hugged her tightly like a childish and uneasy child. Because my world needed sunlight, you appeared. Because my world needed sunlight, so you appeared. Yun Shushu's pupils contracted. This was probably the first time in a long time that he had said such romantic words. Her heart was instantly filled with a warm current of endless energy. Yun Shushu bit her lip, crying and laughing at the same time. He said that she was his sunlight, the sunlight in his world. Mu Yaja looked at her crying, but he did not know what she was thinking. He held her face and said helplessly, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not good at expressing myself. I don't know what to do to stop your imagination from running wild. As he spoke softly, he gently kissed her brows, the tip of her nose, and the tears at the corner of her eyes. As for what you said, in the future, it won't happen again. I'll tell you everything you want to know. No matter what it was, he would never bury it in his heart again. This was a promise he made. When he said it, he would do it. Yun Shushu choked. If I was really pushed down the stairs by Mu Wanru that night, what would you do? If it wasn't for Hua Jin that night, she would have really been brought to hell by Mu Wanru and consigned to eternal damnation. What would happen to him? Would she be sad? Mu Yaja suddenly hugged her tightly. Her words, however, had undoubtedly hurt him. Over the past few days, he had constantly thrown himself into work to punish himself. How could he not hate himself for his carelessness, which had allowed Song Enya to find a loophole and put her in danger? How could he not blame himself? She thought he was snubbing her. Actually, he was just punishing himself for his failure. Mu Yaja caressed her cheek and said in a deep voice, I will accompany you. Even if it was hell. He would also accompany her. Yun Shushu felt her heart skip a beat. The words that she had always wanted to hear, now coming out of his mouth, seemed somewhat unreal. In fact, she had always felt that the so-called relationship between her and Mu Yaja was unfair, perhaps because of her family background. They were not on equal footing. Perhaps there was a reason for being well-matched in terms of social status. However, she had always been competing for him. Mu Yaja told her to stop acting, but she persisted. She only wanted to become an outstanding woman one day and stand by his side. Chapter 2039. That was why she tried to be more perfect. But he said that he would be with her. Really? Was he coaxing her or did he really mean it? Yun Shushu suddenly felt that she had had enough. She wanted to hear him say something to make her feel at ease, but now that he had said it, she actually questioned the authenticity of his words. This man probably disdained to say any hypocritical words. If he could say that, it meant that he really meant it. Maybe, she desperately wanted a sense of security from him. Now that she had gotten it, she started to worry about her gains and losses. Yun Shushu hugged him back and hugged his strong back tightly. It was enough. It was really enough. She was a woman who was easily satisfied and did not ask for too much. If he could say that, it meant that she was really important to him. No matter what he said, she would trust him unconditionally. Even if it was a lie, she would believe it to the end. Even if it was poison, she would accept it with a smile. This was her trust in him. Not angry anymore. Seeing that her expression had finally eased a little, Mu Yaja pinched her face and pecked the corner of her lips. This little thing's bad mood came and went quickly. She was satisfied with just a few words of coaxing. Seeing that she was satisfied, he suddenly felt a little empty in his heart. Only then did he realize that this woman didn't actually want much. Giving her a sense of security was enough. She was different from other women. If it were other women who were angry at this time, as long as a man gave them expensive jewelry, Hermes bags, Chanel brands, diamonds, and rings, their anger would probably dissipate and they would be beaming with joy. But what she wanted was just a sentence of affirmation, a promise, a sentence of, "You are very important," and her heart would bloom. He helplessly realized that what she wanted was so insignificant, but he had not done well enough. His heart felt like it was being stabbed. It would not happen again. It really would not happen again. He would not let her be in danger again, he would not let her be neglected, and he would not let her make wild guesses. Muyaja hugged her, his heart full of guilt. These few days, he had been thinking about her thoughts, but in the end, he realized that what she wanted was so simple. It was a long night. He hugged her and coaxed her, and the two of them fell asleep in each other's arms. Early in the morning, Yun Shusher opened her eyes and woke up, but the bed was empty. The man had already left. Muyaja woke up very early. At 7:00 in the morning, he hurriedly got up and left a good morning kiss on her forehead. After washing up, he went out. These days, the crew was on holiday, and Qin Zhou was also very busy. It was rare for her to have some free time. Yun Shusher thought that she should make up for the fatigue from the previous few days, so she turned over, wrapped herself in the quilt, and fell asleep again. Mu Corporation's building. When Muyaja arrived at the office, Minyu had been waiting for him for a long time. As soon as he entered the office, Minyu rushed up to him. "Chairman Mu, there's news." "Speak." "She is now in Baltimore, Maryland. Her itinerary has been controlled, but please rest assured that the people we sent did not alert her. They are currently monitoring her every move." Muyaja sat down at the table. "Baltimore, Maryland? Where is she?" Chapter 2040. Muyaja's eyes shot up sharply. "Impregnation?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Minyu looked left and right before he suddenly walked over, bent down, and whispered a few words into his ear. Muyaja's face turned colder, and his eyes emitted a heart-palpitating chill. Minyu stood up and observed his expression in fear. Muyaja sneered. "She's crazy." She had undoubtedly touched his reverse scale by doing this. Naive. She thought that her plan was foolproof because it was meticulous. Did she think that he was a decoration? How dare they try to pull such a stunt behind his back? So what if she succeeded? Did she expect him to admit it? What a joke. Since she insisted on planting such a seed of disaster, he did not mind accompanying her to the end. "We're also very surprised to hear this news." Muyaja said coldly, "We must not let her succeed." "Yes, I understand. I'll do as you say." "Does the Songs know about this?" "They probably don't. She hid it from everyone, including the Songs." "Ha!" Muyaja slammed the report on the table and leaned back in his chair. He closed his eyes to rest for a while before suddenly opening them with a sharp gaze. "Come here." Minyu immediately walked over and bowed respectfully. Muyaja whispered a few words into his ear before waving his hand. "Do as I say immediately." "Yes." Minyu nodded and hurriedly left the office. Muyaja picked up the report on the table with a cold gaze, his lips curling into a cold smile. Since she had done this, he did not mind eliminating the source of the problem. Baltimore, Maryland, United States. Johns Hopkins Hospital. Song Enya stood in front of the window and looked at the night view. The window reflected her pale face, which looked lifeless. On the third day of her arrival in the United States, she was arranged to stay in the hospital. She followed the doctor's instructions and tried her best to recuperate and wait for the best time to conceive. Her body was not in good condition, so she needed some time to recuperate. However, she was worried that the longer they delayed, the easier it would be for them to be exposed. She had to finish this before he did. She knew that this time, it was all or nothing. There was no room for failure. In fact, she already had a plan for this. She was just hesitating whether she should do it or not. However, after that experience and witnessing Mu Yaja's ruthlessness, she made up her mind that even if it meant risking everything, she would still carry out this matter. She did not alert anyone, not even Song Yunxi and Jiang Qimeng. She left the hospital and quietly boarded a flight to the US. She was determined to leave without hesitation. This idea didn't pop up in a single night. In fact, before this, she had already laid out a detailed plan and arranged everything properly. With her identity, it could be said that her path was unimpeded. There was no resistance at all. Relying on her powerful connections in the country, she almost effortlessly got what she wanted. Now, she just had to wait for the right time to recuperate and undergo artificial insemination at the best time to conceive. She thought that everything was foolproof. Everything was going on nervously and orderly. She would not allow anyone to get in her way. This matter could only succeed and not fail. She had no way out. She could only move forward without hesitation. There was a knock on the door. Chapter 2041. Come in. She stared out of the window with a deep gaze. Behind her, the door opened and a doctor with brown hair and blue eyes slowly walked in. He stopped beside her and asked in a deep voice, "Madam Song, are you resting?" "Yes." The doctor immediately apologized tactfully. "I'm really sorry to disturb you." "It's all right." She turned around and smiled elegantly, showing off her red lips, white teeth, and bright eyes. "How's it going?" The doctor smiled. "I took the liberty to disturb you because of this matter." "Yes, please go ahead." The doctor said tirelessly, "According to what you said, everything is progressing very quickly. However, because the semen is stored at an ultra-low temperature in a liquid nitrogen tank at -170 degrees Celsius, the chances of a successful pregnancy are extremely low. This depends on the quality of the sperm. Furthermore, the artificial insemination can only be completed by relying on complicated equipment and high-intensity technology." Hearing this, she suddenly became nervous and stared at him. "Are you saying that the chances of success are very low?" "Yes." "How low?" She was so nervous that she no longer had her elegant demeanor. She grabbed the doctor's collar, eager to know how low the chances were. The doctor maintained his good demeanor and comforted her uneasiness. "Madam Song, I can understand how you feel. Please calm down. The success rate is low, but it's not as difficult as you think. It's about 40%. In other words, the chances of me conceiving a child are only 40%? She widened her eyes, somewhat unable to accept this. The doctor nodded and pushed the spectacles on the bridge of his nose before explaining, "In addition, your body is weak. Even if the sperm enters your body, it won't be able to complete the union. In other words, part of the reason for such a low success rate is because of your weak body." She bit her lower lip hard. "Fortunately, this gentleman's sperm is very good and is in good condition. However, I'd like to ask if Madam Song can accept IVFET if there's really no conditions." IVFET. Embryo transfer. She had never heard of it before. The reason she knew about artificial insemination was mainly because Mu Yaja had planned to use this technology 7 years ago to select an excellent surrogate mother to give birth to a child through artificial insemination. Yun Shishir was selected at that time, but the report stated that she was not suitable for artificial insemination and the success rate was very low. Song Enya was very surprised when she learned about this. Not long ago, he suddenly remembered this matter. Thus, for some unknown reason, he wanted to stake everything on this one throw and bet all of his chips on this. IVF, though? She did not know. IVFET is also known as test tube baby in your country. To put it simply, it means to take the eggs and sperm out of the body and let them complete the fertilization process in an artificially controlled environment outside the body. Once the fertilization process is successful, the early embryos will be transplanted into your uterus, and the child will be conceived in your uterus. However, there is one thing that I need your opinion on. IVF is very painful, even more painful than artificial insemination. Are you willing to try it? What's the success rate? Chapter 2042. 99%. Song Enya's heart skipped a beat. She turned around and looked out of the window with a complicated gaze. She did not care how painful the so-called pain was. Now that she had her own way, no matter how painful it was, she had to do it without hesitation. Moreover, the doctor said that the success rate was very high. 99% was enough. She turned around and asked, "How long will IVF take?" "It'll take a certain amount of time." "How long is a certain amount of time?" she asked nervously. "I don't have much time. It'll take at least half a month." "Do it immediately. As soon as possible." "Okay, Madam Song. Please don't be anxious. We'll do it as soon as possible." With that, the doctor left in a hurry. Bang! The door closed softly. Song Enya fell onto the sofa as if she had lost all her strength and looked blankly at the ceiling. She did not know how many connections and assets she had used to rush to America this time. She even secretly stole 8 figures from Song Yunshi's account behind the back of the Song family. 8 figures, the price of artificial insemination was much higher than she had imagined. That day, Mu Yaja's indifference made her feel disheartened. She knew very well that this man was disappointed in her. She had also forced herself to give up, to let go, to stop chasing after him. However, she suddenly realized that this man had unknowingly become her whole world. If she were to leave him, her world would instantly become dark and hopeless. What was frustrating was that even though she hated him a lot, she really could not leave him. Therefore, she took an unconventional approach and came up with this idea. She planned to use artificial insemination to secretly get pregnant with his child behind his back. She thought that Yun Shishir had made use of the child to gain his favor, so why should she not use such a method, too? The status of a mother in a wealthy family always depended on her child. With Yun Shishir's status, she was not worthy of it. However, she was worthy of the Mu family. Yun Shishir must have used the 2 children to tie Brother Mu's heart, so why should she not do the same? If she was pregnant with Brother Mu's child, he would definitely not blame her or abandon her. The child would become a deep bond between them. Even if Brother Mu was cruel and resolute, she would have a child with him. Even if she did not have Brother Mu, she would still have spiritual sustenance. Moreover, no matter how ruthless he would never ignore her. Brother Mu might not care about his own flesh and blood, but the Mu family should, right? Which rich and powerful family didn't value inheritance? She would not force it. Even if she had to marry Brother Mu and become his concubine, she had her reasons now. In the future, there would be plenty of time. She didn't believe that she couldn't beat Yun Shishir. At this thought, she clenched her fists so tightly that her sharp nails dug into her palms. At this moment, the Song family was in chaos. Especially Song Yunshi, when she found out that an 8-figure sum of money in her account evaporated overnight, she was so anxious that her head hurt. There was no need to investigate to know who had moved the money. Other than his father, Song Enya was the only one who knew his account password. Now, she had also disappeared without a trace. If it wasn't her, who could it be? What a disappointing fellow. Where did he go? Chapter 2043. Song Enya was very ruthless. She was worried that her whereabouts would be exposed to Mu Yaja sooner or later. Hence, she did not inform anyone. Song Zhenguo was so angry that his blood pressure rose sharply and he almost had a stroke. When he learned that his daughter had disappeared overnight, he was so angry that he scolded Jiang Qimeng harshly. Look! Look at how you've taught such a good daughter to become like this. She disappeared overnight as if she had evaporated from the face of the earth. Is this the good daughter you've taught? Enya is just a child. She's not sensible at all. Are you not sensible, too? You must find the child as soon as possible. If anything happens to Enya, I'll divorce you. Jiang Qimeng was already worried and distracted. She had already asked for help from her connections to search for the child. Now that she was humiliated by him, she even had the thought of killing herself. He actually dared to say something like, divorce. Besides, was she really the only one responsible for Song Enya's current state? In the entire Song family, he was clearly the one who doted on his daughter the most. He took a large part of the responsibility for Enya's current state. When Enya was disobedient when they were young, she would be yelled at by him when she wanted to educate her properly. Jiang Qimeng felt aggrieved and helpless as tears rolled down her cheeks. She was helpless and helpless. Divorce was impossible. If he wanted her to divorce, she might as well die. If word got out that she wanted a divorce at this age, wouldn't she become a laughingstock? At the very least, she would die a glorious death with the title of the mayor's wife. Jiang Qimeng also felt extremely disheartened. All these years, she had suffered many grievances in this family, but she had no one to complain to. Although she was the madam of the Song family and the mayor's wife in name, she was well respected and had a status. When she entered and exited the upper class, she received polite and attentive gazes. This indeed satisfied her vanity to a large extent. But in reality, how could she have any status in such a big family? She was the eldest madam. On the surface, it sounded nice. In such a patriarchal family, how could she have the right to interrupt? Putting aside the days of fear and trepidation, as well as the colorful flags that Song Zhenguo would fly outside behind her back, as the legal wife, she could only turn a blind eye to it. But if she were to talk about the mistreatment she suffered at home, not to mention her husband, even Song Enshi, a young child, was spoiled and arrogant. She did not even respect her mother. It was really very sullen. Now that Song Enya was missing, she was blaming her for it. She simply could not bring herself to say anything. Song Yunshi sat at the side and didn't say anything. Song Enshi hid in her brother's arms in fear and didn't dare to make a sound. She only knew that her sister was missing, but she didn't know where she had gone. From beginning to end, Song Yunshi did not mention the transfer of assets in the account. He didn't dare to mention it. If his father knew about this, he would definitely fly into a thunderous rage and vent his anger on him. Song Yunshi only wanted to find Song Enya's whereabouts as soon as possible. As for these assets, he always suspected that Song Enya must have a need for them. As for what she wanted to do, he still did not know. Song Yunshi was afraid that she would cause an earth-shattering commotion, so he had already sent more people to search for her. Chapter 2044. There's an acquisition proposal tomorrow, and we need to start an international video conference. Got it, boss. Have you found out anything about that matter? Yes. Min Yu nodded. 7 years ago. Do you still remember how you froze and sealed the sperm in the sperm bank? Yes. 7 years ago, a private hospital under the Mu Group was preparing to carry out artificial insemination. Everything had been prepared, and all that was left was to wait for Yun Shishir's medical report. If there were no accidents, the procedure would proceed as usual. However, at that time, Yun Shishir's body was found to be unsuitable for artificial insemination due to her physical condition. Hence, they gave up on this option. The hospital sealed the sperm in the sperm bank and used a nitrogen tank to freeze and store it in case of an emergency. How did this thing fall into her hands, though? Mu Yazhe looked at Min Yu suspiciously. The latter calmly said, the person in charge of this matter has been arrested, and the investigation is ongoing. Ha! Mu Yazhe coldly curled his lips and asked, is she still in the hospital? Yes. I heard that she's recuperating now. The doctor said that she's a little weak. I also heard that the doctor is going to arrange for her to undergo artificial insemination through IVF. Boss, do we need to stop her? Mu Yazhe's eyelashes drooped expressionlessly before he suddenly smiled deeply. No need. Question mark. The assistant was stunned. Boss, you mean, Mu Yaja faintly said, since she's so desperate to have a child, why don't we let her get what she wants? Did she think that she could marry into the Mu family because of her son's status? She's really ambitious. But, do as I say. Don't alert her. Mu Yaja slightly propped his chin up and gently rubbed his fingertips against his lips with a playful look in his eyes. I'd like to see what tricks she has up her sleeve. Min Yu fell silent. Boss, do you have to be so scheming? It's scary when you're scheming. As he thought of this, he observed a moment of silence for Song Enya again. Of all people, she had to offend his boss. Ugh, she would die a horrible death. Min Yu made a cross in front of his heart. After resting for a few days, Yun Shushu returned to the set. She didn't have many scenes left, so she wanted to finish filming as soon as possible. As soon as she returned to the set, she bumped into Lin Ji. She always seemed to be able to accurately interpret the phrase, enemies on a narrow road. When Lin Ji saw her, she was so angry that smoke almost came out of her head. She glared at her like a meat grinder, gritting her teeth as if she wanted to kill her with her gaze. Yun Shushu, on the other hand, smiled. Seeing her expression, she felt happy instead. She liked it when Lin Ji hated her to the core but couldn't get rid of her. Lin Ji must have been very frustrated these past few days. The Best Actress incident at the Golden Eagle Festival was still trending online. Many people were fiercely cursing her, making up stories about her, and humiliating her. Many fans formed a jury and left comments on her Weibo, demanding that she return the title of Best Actress and apologize to Yun Shushu in person. Alas, she had already given up the title of Best Actress only because Yun Shushu felt that it was dirty and didn't want it. Lin Ji felt very wronged. She was already in this state, so what more could she do? Did she have to ruin her reputation before she would let it go? Chapter 2045. Yun Shushu walked around her, wanting to leave. But Lin Ji suddenly reached out to stop her. What? Yun Shushu. Lin Ji yanked her sleeve and forced her to turn around to face her. What do you want? Things have come to this point. It should be enough. Enough? Yun Shushu tilted her head, her expression cold. What do you mean? You're the one who instigated the public opinion online. You want to use cyber violence to put me to death. How can you be so cruel? Ha! You're really unscrupulous in order to suppress me. Suppress? Yun Shushu laughed coldly. Lin Ji, you're really full of yourself. Who do you think you are? Do you need me to put in so much effort to suppress you? Since you've done it, you have to bear the consequences. You're really shameless to put the blame on others. You. Yun Shushu was eloquent. Lin Ji's level of education was nothing compared to hers. She was rendered speechless. She glared at her fiercely, as if she wanted to cut off a piece of meat from her. Don't stare at me like that. Yun Shushu, you're still so dignified to accuse me of being shameless. What about you? Who do you think you are? You're just an actress. Do you think you're superior? Ha! I heard that you're Mu Yaja's kept mistress. You're an underground lover who can't be seen by others. Don't think that you can do whatever you want and be lawless just because you're in the limelight for a while. You're only in the limelight now. Do you think that you can become a phoenix just because you're related to the Mu group? A wealthy family like the Mu group won't tolerate a small fry like you. You can't even cross the threshold even if you want to. Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you're related to Mu Yaja. Underground lover. Yun Shushu was amused as she recalled these words. She was really jealous. Even if she was an underground lover, she seemed to be jealous. Mu Yaja's name alone was enough to attract bees and butterflies. Lin Ji said fiercely, What? Do you think you're his legal wife? She's just a mistress he's keeping. When he's tired of you, he'll kick you away. Just as you said, I'm still in the limelight. If you offend me, aren't you afraid that I'll crush you? She smiled elegantly. Besides, I'm not a secret lover. If she's not his secret lover, could she be his wife? Lin Ji said disdainfully, her eyes full of contempt. Dream on. Ha, I'm sorry, she smiled flirtatiously, then raised her hands slightly and gently moved her fingers. On his ring finger, there was a huge diamond that was incomparably dazzling. 2. You're so pitiful. Yun Shishir looked at her sympathetically. Why don't you ask your sugar daddy to bring you out to see the world more often? If you have the money for shady dealings, why don't you go out and see the world? It's embarrassing that you're so short-sighted. Do you think I'm like you? Treating a fake as a treasure? As she spoke, she glanced meaningfully at the diamond pendant around her neck. The so-called high-quality imitation was the use of real materials to make a one-to-one imitation of a piece of jewelry. Chapter 2046. Yun Shishir could tell at a glance because the diamond necklace she was wearing was a gift from Muyaja. It was a limited edition and the only one in the world. Lin Ji's necklace was obviously a fake. Yun Shishir sneered. Leaving the dumbfounded Lin Ji behind, she took a detour and walked away. Lin Ji snapped back to her senses and turned around to watch her leave. She gritted her teeth in hatred. Yun Shishir. Wow! Shishir, you're awesome. You've finally shown your prowess this time. She stood at the side and was extremely excited after witnessing what had just happened. She happened to pass by and saw that scene. She wanted to go up and help, but seeing how Yun Shishir made Lin Ji tremble in anger with just a few words, she felt relieved. Shishir, you don't know how ostentatious Lin Ji was in the production team after she came back from Sea City. Those people in the production team were praising and flattering her. I felt angry when I saw it. You don't know how detestable she is. Alright, don't be angry anymore. Of course, I'm not angry. Her. The second day after she came back, Huan Yu dealt with her. She's now a laughing stock in the production team. On the surface, they seem to be respectful, but who knows how they're laughing at her behind her back. You see, the moment you came back, she came looking for you aggressively. In the end, you gave her the cold shoulder. I think she's about to go crazy from anger. Ha ha. She was elated. When dealing with people like Lin Ji, there was no need to be polite or give face. Yun Shishir suddenly asked, where's Hua Jin? Hua Jin? She shook her head blankly. I haven't seen him in the production team these past few days. I think, he's sick and needs to rest. Oh. He's probably still in the hospital. She suddenly recalled the scene that day. Lin Shuya, that arrogant woman. Yun Shishir suddenly felt sorry for Hua Jin. She looked at her in a daze and asked curiously, Shishir, what's wrong with you? You're thinking about something. No. Yun Shishir smiled and said, I'm going to do my makeup. There are still 2 more scenes. Yes. You don't have many scenes left. You'll probably be done in a few days. Yun Shishir went to the dressing room to get ready. She changed her clothes and put on makeup. She had been resting at home for the past few days and went through the rest of the script. Because she was very familiar with it and her performance was on point, she basically passed it in one take. After that, Shi and Yun Shishir chatted and laughed as they made their way to the parking lot. The parking lot of the film city was very big, but there were not many street lights, so the light was dim. Yun Shishir was in the midst of joking with her assistant when she suddenly saw a stretch limousine slowly driving toward them from a distance. At first, they did not pay much attention to it. It was only when the limousine drove toward them and stopped in front of them that Yun Shishir reacted abruptly. After the limousine came to a steady stop, the door opened and a few men in black alighted. They eyed them covetously. Shi immediately raised her guard and looked at them warily. She asked coldly, why are you stopping the car here? Who are you? Yun Shishir. A woman's cold voice came from the limousine. Yun Shishir looked in the direction of the voice and saw an elegantly dressed woman alighting from the car with the help of someone. She recognized the woman in front of her at a glance. Mu Shumin. Chapter 2047. He. How have you been? Mu Shumin sneered and took a few steps toward her. However, Mu Shi realized that this woman's legs seemed to be sluggish, as if she had suffered some injury, for it was strenuous for her to walk. Yun Shishir suddenly recalled that, on the day of the engagement ceremony, Mu Shumin had come to the scene to provoke her. In the end, she was beaten to a pulp by Gong Jie's men. She had probably never suffered such humiliation in her life, so she must be bearing a grudge against her. Now, she had brought people here to cause trouble. They were probably here to get back the face they had lost on the day of the engagement ceremony. Now, they had the advantage of numbers and were aggressive. It was obvious that they were not here with good intentions. Mu Shi panicked. She pulled Yun Shishir and retreated a few steps as she glared at them warily. What are you guys trying to do? Mu Shumin smiled maliciously and did not want to say anything more to her. He waved his hand and said in a chilling tone, "Teach her a lesson. Teach her a lesson." As soon as he said that, a few men in black behind him immediately walked toward Yun Shishir and Mu Shi. Mu Shi screamed in fright. Judging from their stance, they were obviously going to lay a hand on them. Oh, God! Who exactly is this woman? Mu Shi did not recognize where this woman came from, but the men in black behind her looked like real weapons. If they were to really lay a hand on them, breaking a few ribs would be considered a small matter. Mu Shi said indignantly, "This is the film studio. There are so many media reporters here. Don't you think it's shameful for you to be violent toward two weak women in public?" Weak women? Ha! Mu Shumin looked at Yun Shishir. I think you're the reincarnation of a vixen. I don't know what sorcery you used to charm that lad. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I think you won't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Yun Shishir, however, was strangely calm. Are you here to teach me a lesson? Does Mu Yaja know about this? Shut up. Don't use that B** starred to pressure me. Why? In terms of seniority, I'm his elder. Do you think I have to care about that lad's face when I teach a B** tch a lesson? Yun Shishir said, You can't say that. What have I done to offend you that you have to make things difficult for me? Knowing that she was stalling for time, Mu Shumin waved his hand and gave his order. You have a sharp tongue. As soon as the order was given, a group of men in black walked towards them. These were Mu Shumin's personal bodyguards, and each of them was an elite. Naturally, their attacks were thunderous. Yun Shishir only felt a gust of wind sweep past her. Unknowingly, a fully armed man appeared beside her and shielded her with his hands, blocking that aggressive slap. Mu Shumin was stunned. The night was too dark for her to see clearly where this man came from. His skills were swift and fierce, but judging from his posture, he was well trained and seemed to be a special mercenary. Chapter 2048. Mu Shumin was frightened by the sudden appearance of several well-trained bodyguards. She was so shocked that she took a few steps back and cried out in panic. A few of the bodyguards at the side reached out and shielded her behind them. She only calmed down a little because there were people protecting her. She snorted coldly. She recognized at a glance who these black-clothed bodyguards who suddenly rushed out were. Mu Yaja had a team of well-trained bodyguards. These bodyguards were mostly made up of outstanding mercenaries. Among them, there were even some outstanding ones who were soldiers who had retired from the battlefront. They were all warriors who had walked out from under the muzzle of a gun. They had experienced all kinds of cruel battlefields, big and small. They were brave and resourceful. Some of them even had military ranks and were born heroes. Looking at the entire Mu family, probably only someone with a status like Mu Yaja could control such a powerful team. Mu Shumin guessed that these people were probably sent by Mu Yaja to protect Yun Shishir. She was immediately furious. Could it be that this brat had really been bewitched by a ghost? When she asked him for a few bodyguards, Mu Yaja did not even agree. Now, he actually sent these people to protect this lowly woman. It was really infuriating. In just a few minutes, it was obvious who had the upper hand. Although Mu Shumen's bodyguards were all well trained, they were still no match for these bloodthirsty warriors. They were quickly defeated. After a few punches, they were beaten to a pulp and were looking for their teeth on the ground. These guys were even considered to be merciful and did not use their full strength. Mu Shumen could not hold it in anymore. Her face turned ashen and her face turned pale. She immediately shouted angrily, "How dare you? How dare you do that? Do you know who I am? How dare you touch my people?" However, no one paid any attention to her stern questioning. Mu Shumen could not take it anymore. She cursed hysterically, "Are you crazy? Don't you have eyes? I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me?" Just as she finished speaking, one of her most valued bodyguards was sent flying with a kick. He fell beside her and was kicked in the ribs. He rolled on the ground in pain. The other party was tall and strong, with an average height of 1.88 centimeters. Coupled with the hard leather shoes on their feet, such a strong force was bound to break a few ribs. Mu Shumen did not expect such a turn of events and screamed in shock. "How dare you? You! Are you all crazy? You guys! Are you guys crazy? I'm Yaja's aunt. All of you, stop!" Mu Mushi, who was standing beside Yun Shishir, was shocked by her words. Because she was not. Yun Shishir had Mu Yaja's support, but she did not have a big shot to take care of her. How could she dare to offend her? She could not afford to offend her. A man in black from the other party stared at her with a sharp gaze. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He was unusually fierce, like a beast eyeing its prey. His aura was terrifying. Mu Shumen was so frightened that she retreated to the side of the car. She trembled in fear from the man's terrifying aura. Chapter 2049. Although his attitude was still respectful, the meaning of his words was already very clear. Mu Shumen's face turned pale as she glared hatefully at Yun Shishir, who was standing behind him to protect her. She only saw the latter standing expressionlessly at the same spot and looking at her calmly. This only made her feel even more resentful. When she heard what he said, she gritted her teeth. This brat's soul had been stolen by this woman. She was his elder. For the sake of a despicable woman, he dared to go against her and beat up her men. She was furious. However, now that the other party's men were all present, she knew very well that, at least for today, she would not be able to do anything to Yun Shishir. Ever since the incident at the engagement ceremony, she had been recuperating for almost a month. Now, her injuries had not healed and she had broken a few bones. Even walking a few steps was difficult for her. After returning to the Mu residence, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Hence, she was determined to teach this arrogant woman a lesson. Mu Shumen had mentioned this to Mu Linfeng, but Mu Linfeng had chastised her. "Are you crazy? Don't you know Yun Shishir's identity? Her younger brother is the chief commander of Hurricane Group, Gong Jie. Do you know the family behind Hurricane Group? That's the Gong family. If you want to go against her, you're going against the Gong family. If you do anything to Yun Shishir, the Gong family will not sit back and do nothing." The Gong family? Mu Shumen clearly knew very little about Gong Jie. Mu Linfeng sneered. "If you'd put in more effort, you wouldn't have been led by the nose by that brat." Mu Shumen was indignant. The engagement ceremony was an accident. If she had brought enough men with her, she would not have been afraid of the Gong family. However, she was more or less in awe of Mu Linfeng's words. During those few days, she lay down to recuperate. However, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. The Gong family actually dared to cause trouble in the Mu family's territory. If this were to spread, how many people would laugh at her? Mu Shumen could not take this lying down. Hence, when she heard that Yun Shishir had been filming for the past few days, she gathered a group of men and was determined to show her her authority as an elder. She would never acknowledge Yun Shishir as her niece-in-law. Look! She had not even stepped into the Mu family's doorstep, but she was already so arrogant. How could she tolerate it? They hadn't even officially married into the family, yet he was already giving her such a big face. He didn't take her seriously at all. What would happen if she let her niece into the family? She could not make any decisions on Mu Yaja's side. She could only watch as Yun Shishir was spoiled by that disappointing nephew of hers. How could she tolerate it when she was so arrogant? However, at this moment, she was once again rebuffed. If Mu Shumin did not care about her reputation and the men protecting Yun Shishir, she would have lost control and rushed forward to give her a few slaps. Good. Good. Ha, Yun Shishir, you're really something. Mu Shumin could not take it anymore and cursed a few more times. Chapter 2050. Aunt Shumin, have you recovered from your injuries? Instead of recuperating at home, why are you looking for trouble? I advise you to hurry up and leave. Don't make a fool of yourself here. Don't call me aunt. I won't acknowledge you as my niece-in-law. Don't even think about it. Mu Shumin was aggressive and determined to give her the greatest humiliation. Alas, Yun Shishir did not buy it. With a smile, she said, I'm calling you auntie on account of you being Yaja's aunt, so I'm giving you face. You can't blame me for not giving you face, can you? After pausing for a moment, she smiled arrogantly. Coincidentally, I don't want to acknowledge you as my aunt either. Calling you that makes me uncomfortable. You. Mu Shumin gritted her teeth in anger, but this young lady had a sharp tongue. Let me advise you, don't embarrass yourself here and don't be an eyesore to me. Mu Shumin was so angry that she could not calm down. Her chest throbbed with pain. She waved her hand and ordered, "Humph. Let's go. Yun Shishir, don't be too smug. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have that rascal protecting you. I'm warning you, the Mu family is not a place where you can step into as you wish. With me around, don't think that day will come." Humph. With that, Mu Shumin got into the car angrily. The car started and sped off. Yun Shishir sneered as she watched the car leave. After it was far away, the smile on her face froze and her breathing became uneven. Mu Shumin was so angry that she almost had a heart attack. How could she not be angry? This was not the first time she was scolded, but this time, she endured it. Yun Shishir turned around and smiled gratefully at the bodyguard beside her. Thank you. You're welcome. It's Chairman Mu's orders to protect you. We're just following orders. Still, I have to express my gratitude. Yun Shishir smiled and asked, where did you guys come from? Chairman Mu told us not to disturb you, so we have been secretly protecting you. Ever since she returned to the capital, they had been assigned to her side to silently protect her. They were all elites dispatched by Mu Yaja, so Yun Shishir did not even notice their existence after so long. Yun Shishir broke into a cold sweat, but she felt a trace of warmth in her heart. It turned out that, this man had always sent people to protect her, but he had never mentioned anything about it. He had always been like this, always remaining calm and collected. He only did things silently without saying anything. Mu Shi, on the other hand, was so envious that she whispered, Shishir, I'm so envious of you. CEO Mu dotes on you so much. I didn't even know that he sent so many bodyguards to protect you. Just now, it really scared me. With so many people, I thought we were going to be in trouble. Our ribs would definitely be broken by those people sent by that old woman. Old woman, Yun Shishir smiled. Now that she's gone, you know how to be fierce with your mouth. I can't help it. I'm just a small figure, like an ant. I don't dare to be so loud in front of that big shot. I'll definitely be crushed to death by her finger. Mu Shi pouted aggrievedly. If I had Chairman Mu's protection like you, I'd definitely be like a crab and walk sideways. Crab? What kind of adjective was that? Yun Shishir did not know whether to laugh or cry. Enough. Don't sulk. It's getting late. Let's go back. Chapter 2051. When Mu Xiumin returned to the Mu residence, she coincidentally bumped into Mu Yancheng, who was visiting old Master Mu. In the living room, she was sitting on the sofa with a livid expression. She was so angry that she swept the tea set on the coffee table to the floor. Rip, the teacup shattered, and tea splattered everywhere. Mu Yancheng had just come downstairs when he saw her flushed with anger. He could not help feeling puzzled. "Auntie, what's wrong? Who was the one who made you suffer so much? Who else could it be? Isn't it that B***tch?" She was so furious that she did not choose her words carefully. When Mu Yancheng heard this, he quietly scanned his surroundings. The servants at the side immediately retreated with their heads down. When only Mu Yancheng and Mu Xiumin were left in the spacious living room, Mu Yancheng sat down beside her and gently caressed her back as he coaxed, "Auntie, don't be angry anymore. Tell me what's wrong, Auntie. What's the use of telling you? Can you stand up for me? Can you help me teach her a lesson? You can't even beat that rascal Yaja, so what's there to talk about?" Mu Xiumin hated him for being a disappointment. Now that she was in a fit of anger, it was inevitable that her tone would be unpleasant when she spoke to Mu Yancheng. Her words were as if they were poisoned. Mu Yancheng's face alternated between green and white at her words, but he could not refute her. Expressionlessly, he took a deep breath, clenched his fists, and gritted his teeth to suppress his grievances. "If I want to fight with second brother, I need to have the right to do so. Now that second brother is the head of the Mu family, he has a high position and authority. How can I compare to him?" Mu Xiumin was so angry that she could not speak. After a long while, she took a deep breath and said calmly, "Today, I went to look for that woman." "Oh." Mu Yancheng looked at her. "Why did you look for her?" "As her elder, I should show her who's boss. But guess what? Your second brother sent a group of people to protect her in secret and beat up my men until their faces were swollen." The more he spoke, the angrier he became. "Auntie, don't be angry. Why do you care about that bitch? Don't lower yourself to her level. What are you doing? Now that she's relying on your second brother's protection, she's almost riding on my head. How can I not be angry? She doesn't put me in her eyes at all. She deserves to die 1,000 times over." Mu Yancheng smiled with a sinister look in his eyes, as if he was scheming something. He rolled his eyes and gently covered the back of Mu Xiumin's hand. He suddenly said, "Aunt, look at second brother, ever since he became the Mu Jia's lord, his temper has become more and more arrogant. This was not a good sign. As the Mu Jia's lord, he should take care of the family's righteousness. But look at him, second brother, for a woman, he made the whole Mu Jia into a mess. All the elders in the family had opinions about him. With how he handled things, how could they be assured to hand over the position of lord to him? I really don't understand why Grandpa insisted on giving him the position. In my opinion, second brother is really too disappointing." Mu Yancheng had long coveted the position of lord of the Mu family. Among the younger generation, Mu Yaja was the leader. Whether it was in terms of ability or talent in business, at a young age, he had extraordinary courage and was quite a leader. Chapter 2052. Mu Yancheng, on the other hand, was different. Although he was not as good as Mu Yaja, the ambition in his bones was quite big. Since ancient times, no one could resist the charm of power. Once one had a taste of being able to call the wind and summon the rain and see those powerful people bow down to him, he could not stop even if he wanted to. Who didn't want to reach the peak and become strong? Although the Mu family was not a royal family, such a family was similar to the royal family in ancient times. Therefore, Mu Yancheng had been competing with Mu Yaja since he was young. However, in terms of ability, he was always suppressed by Mu Yaja. Moreover, at that time, Mu Linfeng saw that Mu Yancheng was a disappointment, so he abandoned him and supported Mu Yaja to take the throne. The inner circle of the family also thought highly of Mu Yaja, this outstanding junior, and did not have any complaints. Mu Yancheng also wanted to give up at first. However, ever since Yun Shishir's appearance, the situation had changed. Now, the inner circle of the family was not united, and their opinions were not unified. Some elders thought that no matter who Mu Yaja married, they would not have any opinions. After all, as long as he could manage the Mu group well, it did not matter what kind of woman Mu Yaja married. In the entire capital, in terms of qualifications, no other family was comparable to the Mu family, so they let him be. However, some people thought that a woman like Yun Shishir would be a demoness in ancient times. If Mu Yaja put all his attention on such a woman, something would happen sooner or later. In ancient times, there was a saying, Bobaeasai's smile, the beacon fire teasing the feudal lords. It was hard to guarantee that such a ridiculous thing would not happen again. Not to mention other things, after Mu Yaja took the throne, he immediately replaced all the spies that Mu Linfeng had planted around him. Once the monarch took the throne, the officials around him would naturally be replaced as well. Just this point alone was enough to make Mu Linfeng upset. The outstanding chess piece that he had painstakingly cultivated had actually started to talk to himself and not listen to his orders. This made him feel an unprecedented sense of crisis. This gave Mu Yanqing an opening. Mu Linfeng was thoroughly disappointed in Mu Yaja now. He began to shift his focus to Mu Yanqing, hoping that the latter would work harder and help him rise to the top. Mu Linfeng had a strong desire for control. Perhaps this was a trait in the Mu family's bloodline. He wanted a family head who was obedient and sensible, no matter how capable he was. However, Mu Yaja's current actions caused him to feel deeply worried. When Mu Shumin heard this, a thought flashed through his mind. Unlike Mu Yaja, Mu Yanqing had always listened to her. Unlike Mu Yaja, that rascal, he would immediately give her a hard time whenever her words were sharp. Although Mu Yanqing was arrogant on the outside, he was very respectful to the elders in the family. Compared to Mu Yaja, she felt more at ease with Mu Yanqing as the family head. Mu Shumin turned her head, and their eyes met briefly. Suddenly, she said, "Aunt is thinking that compared to Mu Yaja, you might be more suitable to be the family head. Your second brother is definitely worrisome and extremely self-centered. After he became the family head, he didn't care about the family's feelings at all. He gets whatever he wants and is lawless. You must know that the Mu family is so big that he can't do whatever he wants." Mu Shumin spoke her mind. The grievances that she had been suppressing for so long were finally vented out regardless of the consequences. Chapter 2053. It seemed that his aunt's dissatisfaction with his second brother had reached its peak. To him, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Why not take advantage of this opportunity to push Mu Yaja down from the position of the family head? He was laughing in his heart, but there was a hint of bitterness on his face. Suddenly, he frowned and sighed, "I also want to. It's not that I covet the little bit of power after becoming the family head. The main thing is that I'm really disappointed in my second brother. So what if the Mu family is powerful? If he marries a broken shoe into the family, who knows how many people will laugh at him? The Mu family's century-old reputation can't be ruined in his hands. If it were me, I would definitely obediently follow my second uncle's arrangements and marry someone of equal social status to win back the family's reputation." He had the intention to gain Mu Shumin's favor. When Mu Shumin heard this, she felt gratified. If Mu Yaja had the slightest bit of obedience from Mu Yanqing, she would not have to suffer so much. Before she could say anything, Mu Yanqing suddenly shook his head and said, "What a pity. I'm just a concubine's son, and my second brother is the legitimate son. It's only right for him to take that position, but what about me? Even if I'm hot-blooded, I can't compare to the noble blood flowing in his body. I think there's no hope for me." As he said this, Mu Yanqing lowered his head in loneliness, and his face was full of disappointment. When Mu Shumin heard this, she felt a little heartache. Immediately, she expressed her dissatisfaction. "What legitimate son or concubine's son? We're all of the Mu family's blood, so isn't it the same no matter who becomes the family head? Don't belittle yourself too much." "Aunt, I'm not belittling myself, but what did those elders say at that time? They said that my second brother's ability is extraordinary, and he's the legitimate son. Since ancient times, whether it's the royal family or a big family, it's always the legitimate son who inherits the family. What about me? It's a pity that I don't have my second brother's fortune, sigh. She let out a long sigh, which made Mu Shumin feel very uncomfortable. Auntie, look. Second brother doesn't even put you and second uncle in his eyes. Not only did he replace all of your people with his own people, in this Mu group, how many words can you and second uncle say now? They didn't even look at the shareholders' proposal and directly rejected it. They didn't give them any face at all. It doesn't make sense. I really feel sorry for you. What's the difference between second brother and an ingrate? As he said that, he slammed his fist on the coffee table. Bang! He sounded indignant. Preposterous. The more Mu Yencheng added fuel to the fire, the more indignant Mu Shumin felt. It would have been better if he had not said that. Now that he mentioned this matter, Mu Shumin was so angry that he could not control himself. Your second uncle and I are to blame for being blind back then. I actually thought he was the most suitable candidate for the position of patriarch. It's all my fault. It's my fault. Mu Yencheng sneered and said, let's wait and see. When he loses the support of the family, let's see what waves he can stir up. Yencheng, you have to work harder. I'll discuss it with your second uncle later and see if we can support you to become the patriarch. Mu Shumin said so. Mu Yencheng was overjoyed. He was pleasantly surprised that Mu Shumin could say such words. What he wanted was Mu Shumin's words. These words were more reassuring than 10 pills of reassurance. Mu Shumin should not be underestimated. He still had a certain reputation and status in the family. Chapter 2054. Mu Shumin pondered for a while and suddenly sighed. However, don't underestimate your second brother. Think about it. When he was young, he avoided countless disasters in the family. Now that he has inherited the family's power, it's obvious that he's not a kind person. His means are not something that someone of your level can go against. Don't provoke him if you don't have the right time. Now, your second uncle and I are more or less afraid of him, so don't mess around. Mu Yencheng nodded. Auntie, you know that I don't like to stir up trouble. What you need to do now is to become stronger than him. Your second uncle and I will start by persuading a few elders in the family. Yencheng, if you do well, your second uncle and I will definitely lend you a helping hand. Mu Yencheng was overjoyed. However, even though he was overjoyed, he still maintained a calm and collected expression. Yes. Yencheng really doesn't deserve Auntie's high regard. However, Yencheng will not let Auntie down and will definitely work hard. If I have the chance to inherit the family's power, I will definitely do my best and make the Mu family stronger. Yencheng, I'm very pleased to hear your words. Mu Shumin smiled, but he also had other thoughts in his heart. What she wanted now was an obedient puppet. She was still hoping to leave the position of the head of the family to her son. Mu Yencheng was sensible and obedient. When the time came, when he abdicated, there would definitely be a chance. The two of them remained silent, but each had their own ulterior motives. After half a week of rushing filming, Yun Shusher's scenes were successfully completed by the weekend. On the day of the completion of filming, Hua Jin returned to the capital from Sea City and returned to the set. Yun Shusher's scenes were completed, and the script was more than halfway done. Gu Xiaoyang was in a good mood, so he specially ordered a huge cake to be prepared. That night, he magnanimously booked a large private room in the hotel to celebrate it. Yun Shusher saw that Hua Jin had returned to the set. The stitches on his wound had been removed, and he was just like before. He still had that arrogant attitude, as if nothing had changed. The only thing that had changed was that he seemed to be a little colder towards her than before. When he saw her, he nodded slightly and smiled. He didn't talk much. He didn't mention anything about what had happened in the past few days. She originally wanted to show her concern for Lin Shuya, but seeing Hua Jin's distant and indifferent attitude, she dismissed the idea. She had changed a lot. He was still indifferent to others. Could it be that he was wary of Lin Shuya, so he kept a distance from her? Yun Shishir was upset. She wholeheartedly wanted to help Hua Jin break away from that circle and Lin Shuya's control. She could tell that Hua Jin hated Lin Shuya from the bottom of his heart and wanted to get rid of her control. However, he was more afraid of her than hate. He didn't know how much power the Lin family had to make him tremble in fear. He was probably afraid of implicating her. That was what Yun Shishir thought. At the celebration party, everyone was cheering. But she was smiling on the surface, but she was feeling disappointed. She was a little reluctant to leave the set. During this long filming, there were tears and laughter. Although there were unhappy moments, most of them were unforgettable memories. Shishir, I envy you. You have completed filming smoothly. We still have a long way to go. A supporting actress in the set said enviously. Chapter 2055. Her role was a thankless one. When the TV series was broadcasted, the audience would definitely hate her and wish for her death. Once it was broadcasted, her Weibo would surely be attacked. This role was really a thankless one. Not only did she harm the female lead, but she also stole the male lead. She was shrewd and scheming, making her a very vicious supporting character. When she first read the script, she was furious, but more than that, she was excited. To be able to take on such a difficult role was really exhilarating. Of course, she was also prepared to receive all kinds of criticism. She snorted and lowered her voice to Yun Shishir. It's so unfair. Lin Ji is clearly the most suitable for such a vicious role. She's practically acting herself. Shishir, why didn't you take on the role of the female lead back then? Boss Qin has already arranged everything for you. Even Director Gu has personally selected you. Lin Ji heard this from the side. I think she knows her place. She knows that she can't take on the role of the female lead. She's not famous enough, so she definitely can't raise the ratings. Other than the few main leads, Director Gu and the rest of the higher-ups were not present. Hence, she did not have any scruples with her words. She was very unhappy with Yun Shishir, but she could not do anything to her. Hence, she could only flaunt her glib tongue. She was instantly enraged when she heard this. This person was clearly provoking her on purpose while Director Gu was not present. Just as she was about to speak, Yun Shishir stopped her. She then turned to look at Lin Ji, smiled elegantly, and drawled, I don't have a choice. Who asked me to be a capable actress? If I let you take on such a difficult role, you definitely can't do it well. I gave you the female lead role because I'm taking care of you. You should thank me. It was an understatement, but it was extremely sarcastic. A few actors at the table snickered while covering their mouths. Lin Ji was a little embarrassed. She glared at her fiercely and stubbornly said, Who said that I can't act? Do you think my acting is worse than yours? He. Yun Shishir, don't think too highly of yourself. If word gets out, you'll become a laughing stock. What gives you the confidence to say that your acting skills are better than mine? Hua Jin frowned impatiently but did not say anything in the end. When Yun Shishir heard this, she said something vicious, I don't think so. I don't have the right to say that in front of an actress who even had to resort to underhanded means. Lin Ji's face was livid as she was rebuffed. Yun Shishir's words didn't care about her feelings at all and humiliated her to the core. In front of everyone's eyes, she peeled off her face until there was nothing left. Everyone covered their faces and snickered. This scene was really too satisfying. They didn't dare to argue with Lin Ji. Hence, many of them in the crew quietly accepted Lin Ji's words but didn't dare to say anything to her face. But Yun Shishir's words helped them vent their anger. Lin Ji looked around and saw that everyone, be it the lead or the supporting cast, was secretly laughing at her. Their gazes were filled with contempt. She instantly felt like she was sitting on pins and needles. She felt that she had lost all her face. In the past, she didn't realize that Yun Shishir was so sharp-tongued. She was probably picking on her soft spot to step on. Chapter 2056. Thus, Lin Ji endured the humiliation again and again. However, she also learned to be obedient and did not dare to provoke him again. Hua Jin glanced at her and then silently retracted his gaze. He casually picked up the teacup and took a sip. He frowned and spat it out on the plate. Yun Shishir saw this and immediately asked with concern, "Is it hot?" Hua Jin shook his head, but his attitude was a little indifferent. Yun Shishir's expression was a little cold. Lin Ji saw that Yun Shishir had finally put on a cold face and instantly sneered. Unexpectedly, as soon as she sneered, Hua Jin glared at her coldly. Almost in the next second, the slightly hot teacup in his hand was fiercely thrown at Lin Ji. Lin Ji was suddenly splashed all over. It was so hot that she screamed and immediately stood up. She hurriedly patted the tea off her body and shook her clothes while crying. Even though she was nimble, the skin under her clothes was still scalded red. Hua Jin violently threw the teacup on the floor. With a crack, the teacup broke into pieces. Everyone was frightened by his sudden anger and instantly fell silent. They did not dare to breathe loudly. Yun Shishir was also stunned. She did not expect the situation to develop like this. However, Hua Jin's expression was incomparably cold as he said coldly, "Don't show me that face." "Hua Jin." Lin Ji cried pitifully, "What are you trying to do? You want to disfigure me, don't you?" "Disfigure you?" Hua Jin laughed contemptuously. "If I wanted to, that cup of tea just now would not have just splashed on you." When Lin Ji heard this, she was so shocked that she broke out in a cold sweat. Hua Jin had been merciful just now, but only splashed on her body. If the angle was a little more extreme, it would have splashed on her face. Lin Ji was so angry that her whole body trembled. Fortunately, most of her winter clothes were thick. Even if she was scalded a little, it was not to the extent of blisters. If it had been summer, then her chest would have been ruined. In the future, no matter what event she attended, she would basically say goodbye to the sexy gown. However, being splashed with tea in public was a great humiliation. Lin Ji bit her lip, tears welling up in her eyes. She choked on her sobs. Why? Why are you doing this to me? What did she say wrong? She didn't even say anything. All she did was unconsciously sneer. She was just watching a joke, yet she was treated like this. However, Hua Jin's lips curled into a mocking smile. His eyes were filled with flirtatious feelings. No reason. I just don't like you. What did he mean by not being pleasing to the eye? He changed his appearance to protect Yun Shishir. On what basis? Why did she have so many people protecting and doting on her? Lin Ji was so angry that she was at a loss for words. She stomped her feet and her assistant immediately stepped forward to calm her down. She smiled and said, "Lin Ji, don't be rash. It's okay. Just change your clothes." Then, the assistant whispered softly into her ear, "Don't lower yourself to Hua Jin's level. You can't win against him. I've taken a look. It's not a big deal. It's just a wet shirt. Just change." There's no need to have a direct confrontation with Hua Jin because of this. This person is not Yun Shishir. It's not good to offend him. Lin Ji also listened to her. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, turned around, and followed the assistant to the bathroom. Chapter 2057. 10 minutes later, Lin Ji returned in a new set of clothes, but she did not look too good. Several producers, executives, and Director Gu arrived one after another. With these big shots holding the fort, Hua Jin restrained himself. He knew how to judge the situation, and so did Lin Ji. As if she had not experienced the unpleasant scene earlier, the atmosphere gradually warmed up. After taking a family photo and taking photos with the main cast, the celebration party came to an end. Yun Shishir and Mu Shi were chatting casually on their way to the parking lot when a hand suddenly reached out from the darkness and pulled her in after turning a corner. Startled, Mu Shi looked over and saw Hua Jin standing in a corner, holding Yun Shishir's hand and raising his finger to signal her to keep quiet. Mu Shi, I have something to tell Shishir. Can you leave us alone? Hua Jin's attitude was still polite. Mu Shi asked for Yun Shishir's opinion, and when she saw the latter wave her hand, she tactfully left. Yun Shishir turned to look at Hua Jin, only to see him looking guilty. His eyes were no longer as cold as before and were now as gentle as water. I'm sorry for making you suffer. Hua Jin, what's wrong with you? You seem to be much colder after coming back from Sea City. Did I get in your way? No. Hearing her say this, Hua Jin's heart ached and he immediately explained, I can only be so cold to you. Is it because of Lin Shuya? Yun Shishir was suspicious. Hua Jin nodded solemnly and said in a suppressed voice, the production team is now filled with her spies. I can't be too close to you. If she finds out, it will bring you a lot of trouble. I don't care. Yun Shishir, however, was nonchalant. I only treat you as a younger brother, just like how you treat me as your sister and family. We won't have any ambiguous relationship. She doesn't think so, though. Hua Jin paused and said casually, Shishir, I'm not worthy of your kindness. Not worth it? Yun Shishir chuckled. How can a person who is willing to risk his life to save me not be worth it? Hua Jin's heart warmed as he was deeply touched. He took a deep look at her, and a touched expression appeared on his face. Shishir. She wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Hua Jin looked at her with a complicated expression, and then smiled gently. Congratulations on wrapping up. Yes. After the two of them parted ways, Yun Shishir sat in the car and looked out the window at the constantly passing street scenery, but she felt lost. Mu Shi cautiously asked, what did Hua Jin say to you just now? He didn't say anything. Oh, Mu Shi was silent for a while before suddenly saying, Hua Jin is actually quite pitiful. Mu Shi's heart ached. Look, even though he has a sugar daddy supporting and pampering him, he doesn't even have basic freedom. He is like a canary trapped in a cage, elegant and beautiful, but his body is shackled, lonely and helpless. Yun Shishir was speechless for a moment, but she did not say anything in the end. It was nearing the end of the year. It was rare for Qin Zhou to give her an early holiday. There was still more than half a month to the new year, but she was already prepared to rest. In fact, many gala organizers had sent invitations to Yun Shishir. It was almost New Year's Day, and seeing how popular The Green Apple was, the organizers hoped that Yun Shishir would go on stage to sing the theme song. Chapter 2058. She planned to spend the Lunar New Year with her family, especially the two little buns. She wanted to spend more time with them. Early in the morning, she was suddenly woken up by her phone. Yun Shishir felt for her phone and answered the call. Gong Jie's charming and sexy voice sounded from the other end. Sister, are you free today? Yun Shishir immediately woke up. Shao Jie. Yu realized that Gong Jie had been coming to China more frequently recently. In Hurricane Group, as the commander, Gong Jie was mainly responsible for all the affairs in the North American market. Therefore, he was very busy most of the time. Moreover, the war market was especially hot recently, and orders were increasing day by day. He spent most of his time on the road to negotiate. The so-called affairs he was responsible for were mostly discussing contracts, orders, and business deals. He wanted to sell the generals and munitions to those who needed them at a high price. The military factories under Hurricane Group were mainly located in remote areas. Some were in China, and some were overseas. The military factories in the North American market were mainly in the Americas. After signing the contract and receiving the deposit, Gong Jie led the mercenary team to the cargo ship and escorted it to the destination. This was his main character. Perhaps one day, he was sitting elegantly in the president's office, discussing affairs. The next day, he would fly to the war zone and send the generals and munitions to the battlefront under the rain of bullets. In the past, when he was free, he would go on a vacation. But now, it was different. When Gong Jia was free, he would fly back to China and pester Yun Shishir for a date. Yun Shishir was very curious about Gong Jia's position. She only knew that he had a company and property under his name, but he did not mention a word about what he did. After she went out, Gong Jia's car was parked at the entrance. He drove a Mercedes-Benz SUV in a low-key manner. The body of the SUV was bulletproof, and the windows were covered with black film. When the windows were closed, no one could see who was sitting inside. She still remembered the last time this guy drove a very flashy convertible sports car. Why was he so low-key this time? In fact, Gong Jia wanted to keep a low profile because he was worried that he would be targeted by his father's spies. After Yun Shishir got into the car, she saw Gong Jia holding the steering wheel with one hand and looking at her from the side with a smile. Surprisingly, he wasn't wearing white today. He was wearing a black sweater, a pair of trousers, and a pair of black boots. It was rare to see him wearing black clothes and a pair of sunglasses. At first glance, he looked extremely handsome and cold. It turned out that white was not the only color that suited him. He was dressed in black and had an arrogant temperament, revealing a trace of noble elegance. Yun Shishir got into the car and closed the door. Gong Jia looked at her deeply, suddenly unbuckled his seatbelt, and leaned towards her. A gentle kiss landed between her eyebrows. Gong Jia fastened the seatbelt for her and gently stroked her hair with a gentle gaze. "It's so beautiful today." Yun Shishir's face flushed red at his words. Her mind was in a whirl from his words. She didn't know why, but although this sentence came from her own brother, it made her feel like a young girl in love, and her heart fluttered. Her heartbeat suddenly sped up a little. Yun Shishir said angrily, "Little Jia, are you trying to make me feel like I'm in the car? Tell me, do you have a favor to ask of me?" Chapter 2059. He snorted proudly. "You don't like to hear the truth." Yun Shishir lowered her head and blushed even more. Gong Jia was amused by her bashful look and couldn't help but reach out to tuck her hair behind her ear. "My sister is beautiful. This is an indisputable fact. Whoever dared to deny it would be shot dead by him." "All right." Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This rascal had been very clingy since he was young. Now that he had grown up, he hadn't changed at all. "Where do you want to go?" Gong Jia stepped on the accelerator and turned the steering wheel, but he couldn't think of a good place to go. In fact, he had asked her out because he missed her. No matter where he wanted to go, she would accompany him. Some time ago, he had been sent to the Middle East to negotiate an order and was in a terrible fix. After settling that matter, he wanted to have a good gathering with her. However, he couldn't think of a good place to go. "Are you hungry?" "Yeah, a little." Yun Shishir rubbed her stomach. She had slept in today and didn't eat breakfast. Hence, her stomach was growling now. "Let's go eat something then." The car drove all the way to the city center. However, just as the car was parked in the basement, Gong Jia discovered a tragedy. He didn't seem to have his wallet with him. After fumbling around for a long time, he found a few $. He was instantly embarrassed and looked at Yun Shishir in embarrassment. He asked quietly, "Sister, did you bring your wallet?" Yun Shishir fumbled around for a while and also found a tragedy. She took out $100 bill awkwardly. "Is it enough for a big meal?" The two of them were silent for a minute as they looked at each other. Gong Jia said, $100 doesn't seem to be enough for the basic expenses of a restaurant." Yun Shishir was speechless. At that moment, Yun Shishir's stomach growled. In this awkward atmosphere, it added a sense of desolation. Gong Jia touched the bridge of his nose. "I'll go back to the hotel to get it." "You don't have to go back to get your wallet." Yun Shishir suddenly thought of a place to go. I know a place where you can have fun with 100 yuan. Where? Xinmin Street. Half an hour later, Gong Jia parked his car on the side of Xinmin Street. Looking at the endless stream of people, he felt a sense of novelty. Xinmin Street was a crowded street filled with commoners. Well, although they were called commoners, it was actually a place frequented by many working class and workers. There were many small restaurants and snack bars here, as well as many small department stores and dollar supermarkets. There were malatang, Lanzhou ramen, and home-cooked dishes. Most of the customers here were students and office workers from the Xinmin Street area. At noon, the place was bustling with activity. In such a civilian food street, a shiny Mercedes-Benz SUV suddenly drove into it. As expected, it attracted everyone's curious and amazed eyes. Yun Shishir suddenly felt that she was like a national treasure in a zoo being surrounded by people. What was depressing was that Xianmin Street was targeted at students and office workers. Young Master Feng wandered around for a long time but still couldn't find a parking spot. There was a hospital closest to Xinmin Street. Yun Shishir suggested that they park in the hospital parking lot nearby. Do you eat spicy food? Gong Jia said, up to you. Yun Shishir cheerfully suggested that they eat malatang for lunch. She was a little spicy and was afraid that Gong Jia would not be able to adapt to such a down-to-earth snack. Chapter 2060. Gong Jia lived like a prince, so he must have never eaten a snack like malatang before. She thought that he would refuse, but he actually nodded in agreement. When the two well-dressed men appeared in the small and cramped mala hotpot shop, the diners were so surprised that they forgot to move their chopsticks, especially when it was a handsome man like Gong Jia who appeared at the entrance. Everyone thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them. These two people didn't look like people who would come to a place like this, right? Or did they just want to experience life on a whim? Especially the employees working at the counter in the nearby shopping mall. They looked at Gong Jia in amazement and whispered softly. Look, that man is so handsome. He's more handsome than many of the celebrities on TV. Could he be a real celebrity? I think he has a noble aura, like a rich young master. Gong Jia's exquisite and devilishly handsome face instantly attracted everyone's attention. There were also many female students eating in the snack bar. They were all mesmerized by his devilishly handsome face, and all of them were looking at him in amazement. However, he turned around as if he didn't see them. He sat down on a short seat, took a handkerchief, and carefully wiped the table carefully. Yun Shishir had just taken the basket and was about to pick the dishes when she heard Gong Jia politely say, "Boss, give me a serving of malatang." Everyone and the lady boss were speechless. It was obvious that this young master had never eaten malatang before. Yun Shishir held back her laughter and said, "Shao Jia, this is not how you eat malatang." Gong Jia raised his eyebrows in confusion. Yun Shishir took the basket and explained as she took the dishes, "Just order whatever you want to eat, and then put it in the pot together." Gong Jia lazily propped up his chin and said coquettishly, "Order one for me." "Do you like everything I order?" "As long as it's ordered by you, I'll finish it." Everyone looked at Yun Shishir with envy. Yun Shishir instantly felt prickles on her back. It seemed like, had she and little Jia been misunderstood as a sweet couple? Yun Shishir shrugged helplessly. She took 2 baskets and glared at Gong Jia from behind. Gong Jia, on the other hand, sat obediently in his seat as his gentle gaze remained fixed on her. At this time, 2 little girls walked in from outside the door. They saw the elegant man sitting in the corner. They tugged at each other's sleeves and whispered to each other. "Oh my God, so handsome, so handsome." Yun Shishir happened to catch the whispers. She turned her head coolly and saw the 2 girls running over happily. When they reached Gong Jia's side, they wanted to sit down. Gong Jia retracted his gentle gaze and saw someone sitting beside him. His gaze immediately turned cold. "There's someone here." "Huh?" The little girl looked at his face in a daze and didn't understand. "Handsome, what did you say?" "I said, get lost." These three words were merciless, arrogant, and cold. The two girls were instantly petrified. Their hearts were broken. A woman at the side kindly reminded, "Young lady, this seat is taken." "It's this handsome guy's girlfriend." "Girlfriend?" Gong Jie raised his eyebrows. He was a little surprised that he was misunderstood, but he didn't correct her. Yun Shishir didn't hear this. She took the dishes and handed them to the boss. At this time, Gong Jie was very curious as he fiddled with Yun Shishir's phone. Chapter 2061. There was a passcode on the phone, but even so, it was not a problem for him. After cracking the passcode easily, a wallpaper appeared before his eyes. The wallpaper was a photo. In the photo, Yun Shishir and Yu Yu's heads were leaning against each other as they smiled at the camera. Xiao Yichen naughtily popped his head out to steal the spotlight. Gong Jie suddenly frowned. Selfie. Women seem to like to take selfies. Out of curiosity, he clicked on a selfie app, Facebook. The lens popped up, and his exquisite handsome face appeared on the screen. He curiously clicked on a decoration, and suddenly, a cat's nose grew on his face. A few wispy whiskers grew on his head, and two cute cat's ears grew on his head. His eyes were instantly enlarged by a circle. His originally arrogant and cold appearance, at this moment, actually looked very cute in the beauty camera. He fiddled with the app excitedly and imitated Yu Yu's expression. He proudly puffed up his mouth and took a selfie. However, this cute expression was not as natural as Yu Yu's. It was awkward no matter how one looked at it. Gong Jie deleted the selfie and faced the camera again. He pouted and took another selfie. Click. Add more spicy food. The spicier, the better. Yun Shishir's eyes shone as she stared at the bowl of malatang filled with spicy paste. It had been a long time since she had spicy hot pot. Today was going to be a good day. She was determined to let Gong Jie experience the true essence of spicy hot pot. Yun Shishir turned around and walked to her seat. She happened to see Gong Jie imitating Yu Yu and making a V gesture. Gong Jie was caught off guard and put down his phone awkwardly. He was inevitably a little awkward when Yun Shishir saw him acting cute. He cleared his throat uncomfortably and glanced at her. Pfft. Yun Shishir could not help but laugh. What? Gong Jie was even more embarrassed. He blushed and felt extremely uncomfortable. Nothing. I'm not laughing at you. Then why are you laughing? Yun Shishir held back her laughter. That's because I've never seen such a cool man acting cute. Xiao Jie, you're quite a girl at heart. Xiao Jie, oh, Xiao Jie. Didn't you see the people around you looking at you as if you were a monster when you took those cute selfies? Gong Jie's face burned even hotter, and he felt awkward. And he said he wasn't laughing at him. It was clear that he was making fun of him. Actually, he wanted to take a selfie with her so that she could use it as a screensaver. However, no matter how many times he patted it, he was still not satisfied. Yun Shishir sat down and suddenly realized something. She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. I remember that my phone has a password. Yes. Gong Jie felt guilty. You. How did you know my password? Such a simple password. Gong Jie cursed in his heart. If he couldn't even do something like this, how could he be called Gong Jie? Moreover, the password was her birthday. It was so simple that even a pig's nose could crack it. Yun Shishir was about to snatch her phone back when Gong Jie suddenly retracted his hand. Then, he hugged her shoulder affectionately and his magnetic and languid voice rang in her ear. Come, look at the camera. Yun Shishir lifted her face in a daze, only to hear a click as the photo froze in place. In the photo, Gong Jie had a devilish smile and a deep gaze. She, on the other hand, had a blank and dazed expression. It was obvious that she was caught off guard. However, Gong Jie felt that her expression was extremely cute. He was satisfied and his lips curled into a charming smile. He finally had a photo of the two of them. He was extremely satisfied. Sister's dazed expression is also beautiful. Chapter 2062. Yun Shishir was dumbfounded as she watched him skillfully swipe the screen and replace the selfie she had taken with the two little guys. This guy. You're not allowed to change the wallpaper. Or else. Gong Jie raised his eyebrows threateningly. I'll be sad. Yun Shishir's lips twitched before she smiled and said, Shao Jie, it's a crime to act cute. Gong Jie was speechless. The boss quickly served the hot and spicy soup. Gong Jie looked down and felt his scalp go numb. He saw kelp, bacon, and wing tips in a medium-sized bowl. What made him gasp was that Yun Shishir had filled it with spicy food for him. From afar, it looked fiery red and looked very spicy. Gong Jie looked up meaningfully and glanced at her. Yun Shishir felt his scrutinizing gaze and turned her face away guiltily. Not to mention that he didn't eat spicy food, even someone who was used to spicy food wouldn't be able to stand it. Seeing Gong Jie's expression, the boss didn't know what was going on and only praised, handsome, you can eat spicy food. I've never seen anyone who can eat spicy food like you. Gong Jie was speechless. Yun Shishir said mischievously, Miss, I wonder if you like the dishes I've chosen. You've said before that you'll definitely finish the dishes that I've chosen. When the boss heard this, he was a little surprised. Your siblings? Yeah. Can't you tell? The boss looked at the two of them a few times before he smiled knowingly. You look alike. I can tell at a glance. But seeing how gentle your brother is towards you, I thought you were his husband. You look like a married couple. Boss, you've misunderstood. He's my brother. Your brother can eat spicy food. There's so much spicy food that it's pungent. The boss was still full of admiration. Yun Shishir glanced at Gong Jie and raised her eyebrows. Shao Jie, why don't you try it? Numbing, spicy, scalding, what did he do wrong for her to treat him like this? Little Jie, Yun Shishir pouted and looked at him coquettishly. Gong Jie immediately picked up his chopsticks and poked at the food in his bowl. Then, he picked up the bacon and tasted it. His eyes suddenly turned red. Spicy. So spicy. Gong Jie's expression tightened as he endured. His face was incomparably ashen, and his cheeks were flushed red. His eyes gradually became moist. Finally, he couldn't hold on any longer and broke down. He covered his face in despair, his aura completely gone. Gong Jie pulled out a tissue in disbelief and covered his burning lips awkwardly. His expression was numb from the spiciness, and his eyes were misty. No matter how he looked at it, he felt wronged. It was as if he was being bullied. Yun Shishir was elated. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at him. She suddenly felt that little Jie was actually very cute like this. She had liked to tease him since she was young. She loved to see him reveal such an innocent and lovable expression. The boss didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He laughed and said, Handsome, is it spicy? I knew it. No one can eat such spicy food. Who said so? Let me challenge you. Yun Shishir quickly picked up a piece of vermicelli with her chopsticks and swallowed it with a slurp. It was delicious. Gong Jie was dumbfounded as he watched her swallow a mouthful of vermicelli with ease. She had put more spicy food in her bowl than he did, not less. Watching her swallow a mouthful of vermicelli, his scalp tightened. The boss was also dumbfounded. Yun Shishir swallowed it and felt a wave of satisfaction. She raised her eyebrows and said, It tastes great. Gong Jie was speechless. The boss was speechless. What was this? Chapter 2063. Eating so spicy, wasn't he afraid that the spiciness would burn his stomach? Gong Jie watched in silence as tears welled up in the corners of his eyes. Just one look at the red and hot liquid and he felt unwell all over. Yun Shishir glanced at him. Seeing that he couldn't stand the spiciness, she laughed and turned to plead with the boss, Boss. Please, change it to white soup for him, okay? Otherwise, I think his stomach is going to burn up after he finishes this bowl. Okay. The boss held back his laughter for a long time. Then, he took the bowl away from Gong Jie's hand and adjusted the soup base. Gong Jie was still traumatized by the hellish spiciness. He took a sip. Seeing that the soup base was not as spicy as before, he ate gracefully. Yun Shishir watched as he ate with his head lowered. His posture was extremely noble and elegant. Compared to herself, it seemed like she was a little rude. She immediately restrained herself and imitated his posture. Gracefully and respectfully, she finished the entire night of spicy soup. After Yun Shishir walked out of the shop with her round belly, Gong Jie, who was standing at the side, mocked, "What kind of life have you been living for more than 10 years? Huh? What did he mean?" She expressed her doubts with a face full of question marks. "You hated spicy food when you were young." Gong Jie recalled their youth. In his memory, Yun Shishir hated spicy food. She couldn't stand it like him. He remembered that once, when they went to eat wontons, he put a spoonful of chili sauce in her soup bowl as a prank. At that time, she didn't know what he was talking about. He lied to her that it was ketchup, so she took a big gulp. In the end, she choked until she was dizzy. She cried because of the spiciness and rubbed her eyes. In the end, her hands were stained with chili sauce. When she rubbed her eyes, her eyelids were red and swollen. She was in extreme pain. Gong Jie was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly coaxed her and hugged her to comfort her. In the end, he carried her home. When Mu Qingxin came back, she saw Yun Shishir's eyes were red and swollen, and his mouth looked like a sausage. She was so angry that she wanted to hang him up and beat him. In the end, Gong Jie was punished to kneel on the washboard. Only then was the matter settled. Now that he thought about it, he found it interesting. However, he was also a little surprised. After more than 10 years, she had changed from a little girl who didn't like spicy food to a terrifying spicy food maniac. How can it be that exaggerated? Yun Shishir smiled. She suddenly turned around and pointed to the opposite side. "Do you see the Soho building opposite?" Gong Jie looked in the direction she was pointing and nodded. "After I graduated from university, I started working there as a clerk. At that time, the salary was very low, only 2,000 yuan a month. You took up a lot of my expenses. In order to save money, I often came here to eat." When Yun Shishir mentioned the past, she didn't feel sad at all. In the past, she often came to Xinmin Street because she was short on money. Usually, she would come here during her lunch break. If she was too busy, she would buy a scallion pancake and eat it all the way back to the office. When her work wasn't too heavy, she could leisurely order a bowl of spicy hot pot. It was economical and affordable. She could eat until she was full with just a dozen yuan. In the beginning, she couldn't eat spicy food. However, she remembered one time when she was in a bad mood. Li Qin and Yun Yechen were divorcing. Coupled with the difficulties in her work, she was in a bad mood. In a fit of pique, she added a spoonful of chili sauce and forced herself to eat it while crying. Chapter 2064. A spoonful of chili sauce became the easiest way for her to vent her emotions. At that time, the boss didn't understand why she was crying and thought that it was because of the spiciness. He advised her, "Don't eat that spicy food. Your stomach won't be able to take it." Yun Shishir smiled with tears in her eyes, but she felt extremely wronged. But now that she thought about it, although those days were tough, they were good memories. At least when she thought about it, she sighed for a long time and found it very interesting. Eating spicy food was also a form of training. Just like life, it would gradually grow with time. Yun Shishir snapped out of her thoughts and looked up at Gong Jie. "Shao Jie, I used to come here often. Xinmin Street is very big and there are a lot of fun things to do." Such as? Wait a moment, let me see our budget. Yun Shishir opened her wallet and flipped through it. $100. After deducting the parking fee of $10 and 2 bowls of spicy hot pot of $28, there were still $62 left. She pursed her lips and smiled. Glancing at him, she winked mysteriously like a mischievous elf. Shao Jia, I'll take you to play Yu Yu's favorite activity when he was young, okay? Gong Jia was a little disgusted and said proudly, no, it's too childish. You might not be able to play Yu Yu's little games. This method of provocation had always worked on Gong Jia. He immediately said unhappily, it's a little bean's game. Why can't I play it? Yun Shishir held his hand and smiled mischievously. Then, they weaved through the crowd and finally came to a side-by-side stall. There were a total of 4 stalls, but they were all opened by the same boss. The boss was a middle-aged uncle who was considered an old acquaintance of Yun Shishir. When Yu Yu was young, she often brought him here to play. Yun Shishir sighed in her heart. Childhood. Gong Jia's face darkened when he glanced at it. The 4 small stalls were arranged side by side, and there were a total of 4 items. Yun Shishir took him to one of the stalls. In the small shop, there was a basketball machine. The basketball machine was very tall, and it could move left and right. Its speed was not slow. Even a 1.8m boy could not take advantage of it. Do you know how to shoot? Yes. Yun Shishir paid the money, and the basketball machine started. She raised a basketball and explained, it costs 5 yuan to play. There are a total of 10 balls. If you hit all of them, you'll get a big doll. As Yun Shishir spoke, she pointed at the big doll placed on the prize table not far away. Gong Jia glanced at it, then lowered his head and raised his eyebrows. You like it? Yes. Of course, but I've never made 10 shots. Gong Jia smiled evilly, but his eyes were full of ambition. He walked to the front of the shooting machine, grabbed a basketball with one hand, and threw it toward the moving basket. Clang! He was in. Yun Shishir was dumbfounded. He actually managed to grab such a big basketball with one hand, moreover, he made it in with just a casual throw. Was he that good? She had seen a boy in a basketball team's uniform play before, and he only made 6 shots at most. Now, Gong Jia had one hand in his pocket and the other hand grabbing the basketball. One by one, he threw the basketball into the basket. Each ball was more accurate than the last. Chapter 2065. His silver hair was neat, and he was wearing a black sweater. His eyes were like cold stars, and the corners of his lips were slightly curved. He seemed to be conceited, but more importantly, he was determined to win. Look, look! That silver-haired man over there, oh my God, he's so cool. I think a man who can pick up a basketball with one hand is the most handsome. Is he from a professional basketball team? He's so good at shooting, every shot is accurate. Also, his shooting posture is so cool. If I were the boss, I'd probably cry in the toilet. Clang! As the last ball spun around the hoop and fell into the basket, the man turned around with a smile and snapped his fingers. Yun Shishir was stunned. Shao Jia, why are you so good at shooting? I used to play it often. Gong Jia shook his head, it's my first time playing it. Yun Shishir increasingly felt that he was not human. This basketball machine is very difficult to shoot, okay? Gong Jia silently criticized in his heart. How could this be considered difficult? His dynamic vision was very good, and with his accurate aim, there was no difficulty at all. When he returned to the Gong family, he received a series of training. Compared to shooting a fast-moving target, this basketball machine was child's play. In fact, he did not like basketball, but he was interested in archery. Seeing that he easily made 10 shots, the boss was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. Yun Shishir excitedly came to the prize table and said to the boss, "Boss, he made 10 shots. Is there a prize?" "Yes, there is." The boss wiped his cold sweat and pointed to the dolls, "Pick one that you like." Oh, Yun Shishir looked around and picked a panda, This one. This one. No. You can only pick from these few. The boss pointed to the dolls that were a size smaller than the panda and said. Why? Yun Shishir could not help but be disappointed. The prizes are different in every game. This panda was awarded by shooting 24 balloons in a shooting game. She was a little disappointed, so she reluctantly picked another lop-eared rabbit. Sigh, at least I've gained something. Gong Jia saw her desolate expression and immediately glanced at the panda placed in the most eye-catching position. He asked, how do you get this panda? Here. The boss pointed at the shooting board, which was densely packed with small balloons. Then, he pointed at an air gun and said, hit 24 of them and you'll get it. Handsome, do you want to challenge me? He was full of himself. This panda was a special prize. It was a premium toy bought from a duty-free shop. It was more than a meter long and was priced at more than 300 yuan. After opening the shop for so long, they had never won the grand prize. After all, the requirement for the grand prize was to hit 24 balloons, but there were only 25 bullets. In addition to the special characteristics of the air gun, very few people could hit 24 balloons without missing a target. Gong Jia walked to the shooting range, picked up the air gun, weighed it in his hand, and said, fill me up with bullets. All right. It's 10 yuan per play. Gong Jia glanced at Yun Shishir, who immediately came back to her senses and obediently took out the money. 24 shots. What a harsh condition. Basically, it was quite impressive to hit 20 shots. Yun Shishir did not have any hope at all. However, since he was interested, she would have some fun. Shao Jia had never played this game before. She would let him experience it. Chapter 2066. When Gong Jia held the gun in his hand, his entire aura was different. There was a sharp and threatening feeling to him. He aimed at a row of balloons and pulled the trigger. Whoosh! Kacha! Whoosh! Kacha! His movements were skillful and clean. After firing a bullet, he didn't even look at it. He quickly reloaded the magazine and fired again. In 30 seconds, the row of balloons all exploded. 25 balloons, not a single one fell. Yun Shishir was speechless. The corner of her mouth twitched violently. She was obviously shocked by his godly marksmanship. The owner of the game stall was equally shocked. He stared at Gong Jia with a gloomy expression. Suddenly, there was a lot of sadness on his face. All of them hit, in 30 seconds, all of them hit, not a single bullet missed its mark. Gong Jia put down the gun in disdain and said coldly, I'm not challenging you. The owner tilted his head and looked at him as if he was an alien. At this moment, all the passers-by stopped in admiration and surrounded the game stall in 3 circles inside and outside. Yun Shishir only reacted after a long while. She walked to Gong Jia in a daze and squinted her eyes to size him up. Gong Jia turned around and saw her complicated expression. He was a little stunned. What's wrong? Shao Jia. Yes? Did you cheat? Yun Shishir still felt like she was in a dream. Gong Jia was speechless. After a long while, he asked, what does cheat mean? Yun Shishir replied. It means to describe a person who is so cool that he can blow up the sky. Gong Jia ignored her and walked to the prize table. Under the owner's tearful gaze, he won the panda and gave it to her. For you. Yun Shishir hugged the doll, still unable to react. However, Gong Jia was already interested in another game. Under the owner's tearless gaze, he slowly walked to the ring-throwing stall and asked curiously, what's this? Hoop hoop. Yun Shishir's eyes suddenly lit up as if she had seen a god descending from the heavens. She leaned over and said, if you manage to get 20 rings, you'll get a limited edition car model from Leji. It's a limited edition toy. When Gong Jia heard the word Leji, he glanced at Yun Shishir's extremely respectful gaze and fell silent for a moment. He cursed in his heart. Sister, you need to work harder. Your son is the person in charge of Liji. Who knows, he might be the one who designed this toy. This game seems very interesting. He had never played Gongjia before and felt that it was very challenging. This game was really difficult. Yun Shishir paid the bill. Ever since Gongjia cleared 2 games in a row, the boss was a little unwilling to do business with them. He was a little unhappy to receive money. Spare him. It wasn't easy to do business. Gongjia held 10 small rings in his hand. The difficult part of this game was that he had to plant a symbol that was half the size of a fist into a symbol that was half the size of a fist. It was very difficult. At first, Gongjia didn't get the hang of it. He only got 3 rings out of 10. He wasn't convinced and asked for another round. When the boss saw this, he was elated. It seemed that this man also had some games that he wasn't good at. At least he could earn back some of his money. Unexpectedly, after figuring out the trick of the hoop hoop in the first round, Gongjia performed very well in the second round and got 7 rings. Yun Shishir calculated. Although she couldn't win the grand prize with 7 rings, she could at least win the second prize. This trip was not wasted. Chapter 2067. The second prize was a very exquisite toy. The boss looked at Yun Shishir with teary eyes as she held the prize in her hands. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. Gongjia looked at another shop. There was an air cushion inside that was filled with water. There were many small goldfish inside. Just as Gongjia took a fancy to the goldfish fishing game, the boss went up to Yun Shishir and begged, "Pretty lady, please have mercy on us. We're all small businesses. The market isn't good now, and it's not easy to do business. I'm still counting on these 4 shops to feed my family. Look, you've already won so many prizes. It should be worth it, right? Stop playing." If they continued playing, this pool of goldfish would be emptied by them. $5 for a net. As long as the net wasn't broken, they would be able to catch a goldfish every time. Just based on this man's inhuman gaming talent, she was determined to fish him out until he lost all his fortune. Yun Shishir suddenly felt that this boss was very pitiful, but Gongjia didn't appreciate it. "Boss, since we're doing business, we have to follow the rules of the game. We didn't cheat, and we won with our own abilities. Why can't we play?" The boss was speechless. He felt wronged and said, "But aren't you a little too good at playing? Look, you won my dolls that cost more than $100 for a $5 shooting game. You won my pandas that cost more than $300 for a $10 shooting game. You won my toys that cost more than $100 for 2 rounds. You've already lost a lot of money." Gongjia didn't listen. He spread out his hands and said, "Give me the net." The boss continued to persuade him earnestly, "I bought these goldfish for $1 each. If you take all of them away, how can I continue doing business?" Yun Shishir was a little unhappy. "If others can take them, why can't we? We have to follow the rules when doing business. Hey, pretty lady, handsome guy, take it that I'm begging you. Stop playing. I'll refund you the money you spent on the game, okay?" He almost knelt down and begged them. Gongjia was very stubborn. "Let me play, or I'll destroy your stall." The boss was shocked when he heard that. Yun Shishir was speechless. "Shao Jia, you're too domineering." If he didn't let her play, she would flip the stall. However, these words were said in a very childish manner, making people not know whether to laugh or cry. Yet, they felt that coming from his mouth, it was actually somewhat cute. The onlookers pointed and whispered among themselves. The boss immediately turned to the passers-by for help. "Everyone, listen to this. This handsome guy is being unreasonable. He wants to destroy my stall. I'm an honest businessman. I'm running a small business and I can't make much money. Why is he making things difficult for me? Boss, you're the one in the wrong. From what I saw just now, this handsome guy didn't cheat or act shamelessly. He followed the rules of the game. He won the prize based on his ability. If you don't let him play, it's you who doesn't follow the rules as a businessman, right? At the side, a male student stood up to protest. Then, the others also accused, so you just want to earn money from people who can't play the game well, right? You're not letting other people play after they've had enough fun. You really know how to do business. It's a free win. Exactly. No one does business the way you do. If the handsome guy wants to play, it's not like he's not paying. He should follow the rules of the game. These kinds of small vendors are the most unreasonable nowadays. They don't say anything when they're making money, but when they're losing money, they act shamelessly. I'll complain to the city management. When the boss heard that they were going to complain to the city management, he instantly shrugged. Chapter 2068. Yun Shishir was speechless. This world was indeed a world where looks were the most important. If it were an ordinary person who was bullied by the boss, there would not be so many people standing up for him. She had lost all hope in this superficial world. In the end, Gong Jia got his wish and took the fishing net from the boss. He sat on the stool and started fishing. 1 fish, 2 fish, 3 fish, the boss's heart was bleeding as he watched from the side. He prayed that the net would break. However, Gong Jia's technique seemed to be special. He scooped up 17 or 18 fish, but the net did not break at all. The more the boss watched, the more frightened he was. However, Gong Jia scooped up more and more fish. His hands were cramping, but the fishing net did not break at all. What the hell? The boss said gloomily in his heart. He had clearly given him a bad net just now. Was this man a god? He had heard that Mr. Jiang used a straight fishing hook to fish. Could this guy use a broken net to scoop up a whole pond of goldfish? He had lived long enough to see this. In the end, Gong Jia got bored of fishing. He threw the fishing net into the pond and carried the bucket of goldfish to the seal. Yun Shishir counted. There were a total of 22 fish. There were so many of them. They did not have such a big fish tank at home. These were still young fish. When they grew up, Yun Shishir did not dare to imagine the grand scene of 22 big goldfish squeezed together. It would be very scary. Yun Shishir had goosebumps all over her body. You don't like them? Yun Shishir nodded. I don't like goldfish very much. Oh. Gong Jia looked at the goldfish and was worried. When the boss heard this, his eyes lit up. Just when he thought that this man was going to put the goldfish back into the pond, he saw him walk over and pass a bag of young fish to a little girl who had been staring at him for a long time. This is for you. For me. Really? The little girl's eyes lit up. She was in disbelief. Yes, my sister doesn't like them. After saying that, Gong Jia took Yun Shishir's hand, carried the 2 big dolls for her, and left. Seeing that the Buddha had finally left, the boss felt a burst of relief. At the same time, his heart ached for his loss. Sigh, this brat had wasted a day's worth of business. Along the way, Yun Shishir was still puzzled. How strange. Gong Jia lowered his head and raised an eyebrow. Yun Shishir raised her doubts. Shao Jia, you're too good at catching goldfish. Generally speaking, that kind of fishing net will break with a single grab. I've seen a good one that broke after catching 3 or 4 fish. So this was what he was curious about. Gong Jia curled his lips into a smile, but played it down. That fishing net won't break. Why are you so sure? Seeing how confident he was, Yun Shishir became even more curious. Gong Jia replied, because that's the net that the boss used to catch fish. In the beginning, the boss had given him a net that was purposely broken. Gong Jia noticed it at a glance, so when the unscrupulous boss wasn't paying attention, he secretly swapped the net that was usually used to close the stall for fish. The boss just didn't notice. Playing such a small trick on him. He didn't mind competing to see who was darker. Yun Shishir was stunned. The boss used to catch fish. Is he that kind? Maybe he took the wrong one. He definitely wouldn't tell her that he had swapped the net. It was too disgraceful and would damage his image. But Xiao Jia, you're too good. Especially the one who shot the balloons. Did you specially practice it? It's my first time playing. Are you that good at games? Chapter 2069. Yun Shishir couldn't help but be speechless. She smiled and asked, did you have fun today? Just now, when he was fishing for the goldfish, she was squatting beside him. Suddenly, she felt as if they had returned to their childhood. He was squatting on the ground to catch ants while she was squatting beside him, holding her head and watching quietly. It was a closeness that they had never felt before. Gong Jia was fishing quietly, and she was watching quietly. Perhaps it was because she had matured too quickly, so every memory of her childhood was very precious. The happiness of her youth was something that could not be returned to. Some people reminisced about the past, but they were reminiscing about the time that could not be returned. Gong Jia looked at her dotingly and said gently, when I'm with sister, I'll be happy no matter what. Why is your mouth so sweet? It's as if it's smeared with honey. Yun Shishir pouted coquettishly and gently pushed his shoulder. She seemed to be disgusted, but she was full of happiness. Gong Jia suddenly hugged her shoulder. Sister, Yun Shishir was startled, but she saw him gently leaning towards her. Almost half of his upper body weight was leaning on her shoulder, and he was very attached to her. I don't want to be separated from you, he said, but there was a hint of coquettishness in his tone. Then let's not be separated for life. But you have brother-in-law. Gong Jia was resentful towards a certain man. Yun Shishir was silent for a moment. You'll get married and have children in the future. I don't want to. Gong Jia was disdainful. I don't want that. I don't want a wife. I want sister. Yun Shishir felt sweetness in her heart, but there was also an inexplicable bitterness. Was this kid acting coquettishly with her? The problem was that his coquettishly skill was comparable to Yu Yu's. It was the same possessiveness as Yu Yu's. They were uncle and niece after all. Their way of acting coquettishly was similar. She had heard a story before. It was said that the twins were lovers in their previous lives. Because they loved each other, they couldn't stay together until the end because their obsession was too deep. In the previous life, if two lovers died for love, in the next life, they would become twins. They would be together before they were born, and in this life, there would be an unbreakable bond. They would be together, but they would not be able to love each other. This was God's reward for their loyalty and love, but it was also a punishment for not cherishing their lives. Yun Shishir was not very superstitious about the past and present life, but for her, Gong Jia was her guardian angel when she was young. This was a deeper bond than the one she had with Mu Yaja. She could feel Gong Jia's dependence on her. What are you thinking about? Gong Jia saw her lost in thought and couldn't help but wonder. Nothing. Yun Shishir came back to her senses and dismissed her wild thoughts. She smiled at him and said, Xiao Jia, shall we go back? So early? Why don't you stay for dinner tonight? I'll make you some soup. Gong Jia was doubtful. Do you know how to cook? Yun Shishir was smug. Of course. Gong Jia poured cold water on her unceremoniously. Won't I be in danger if I eat your cooking? Get lost. I have to be responsible for my own safety. Don't worry. With your body constitution, even arsenic won't kill you. Sister's cooking might be more poisonous than arsenic. Do you believe that I'll beat you up? Even 10 of you can't beat me. Says who? I can lift you up with one hand. The two of them bickered as they walked towards the car. Chapter 2070. Yun Shishir noticed that he was looking somewhere with a vigilant expression. She couldn't help but feel a little nervous. What's wrong? Nothing. Gong Jia turned around and smiled at her. Let's get in the car. Yun Shishir nodded. Gong Jia hugged her shoulders and helped her put on her hat. Yun Shishir was wearing a down jacket and a furry hat. He put it on and covered her head tightly. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she mumbled, "What are you doing? It's cold. Don't catch a cold." Despite Gong Jie's words, Yun Shishir muttered, "I'm not cold. In fact, I'm feeling a little hot." After the two of them got into the car, Yun Shishir put her bag away. He leaned over and gently buckled her seatbelt for her. Yun Shishir was speechless. She always felt that she was like an oversized doll in front of him. Even if it was something as simple as fastening a seatbelt, he had to personally do it for her. She always felt that he treated her like a child, and he was like a parent who cared about her. "Shao Jia, I'm not a child. I can do things like buckling my seatbelt myself." Gong Jia smiled. "Why? Are you still not satisfied with having someone to serve you?" Yun Shishir was amused by him. "All right. I won't say anything else." Gong Jia said, "Sit tight. We're going home." "Okay." Yun Shishir had just replied, but before she could finish her sentence, Gong Jia stepped on the accelerator and the car shot forward like an arrow. Stepping on the accelerator pedal, the car sped up to 4,000 revolutions per second. It only took a few seconds for the car to accelerate from 100 kilometers per hour. Yun Shishir nervously gripped the handle of the car tightly. The huge force and centrifugal force were as thrilling as a high-speed roller coaster. There were 3 red lights on the road. Gong Jia didn't even look at them as he stepped on the accelerator and sped through them. His route was extremely tricky, and he even charged straight into remote areas. Yun Shishir was so scared that she held her breath. She said uneasily, "Shao Jia, we're not in a rush. You don't have to drive so fast, right?" He had already run 3 red lights. There was even a traffic police officer at one of the intersections. This was simply too crazy. Gong Jia didn't say anything as he stared straight ahead. It wasn't until the car reached a provincial road that he slowed down. He looked at the pale-faced person in the front passenger seat and explained apologetically, "I'm sorry. I drove so fast just now because I wanted to shake off the people behind me." "Human?" Gong Jia nodded and glanced at the rearview mirror. When he confirmed that he had shaken off those cars, he smiled and relaxed a little. He turned on the stereo and said, "Well, didn't you notice? Someone is following us." Yun Shishir couldn't help but be dazed. She shook her head blankly. "No. I noticed it when I was fishing for the goldfish." Gong Jia was originally in high spirits and wanted to fish up all the goldfish in the poor boss's pond. However, halfway through, he felt a few pairs of eyes staring at him. He was worried that they were spies sent by his father. He was even more afraid that Yun Shishir's identity would be exposed. Hence, he wanted to leave in a hurry. In fact, he really hoped that his father would know about Yun Shishir's identity. However, he would never force his sister to do something that she didn't want to do. No matter what method he used. He was willing to wait patiently for the day when she would come around. Chapter 2071. Who sent someone to follow you? The Gong family. The Gong family? Yun Shishir was slightly surprised, but she did not say anything else. After a moment of silence, she suddenly asked, "I'm really curious. Why would someone from the Gong family send someone to follow you? It gives people a very uncomfortable feeling. It feels weird." "There's no reason. Firstly, it's to ensure our safety. Secondly, it's because they're worried that someone might cause trouble outside. So that's why." Yun Shishir was even more curious about the legendary Gong family. "Is the Gong family a very big family?" "Yeah." "How big is it?" Gong Jia did not know how to answer this question and only replied, "It's probably much more powerful than you think." Yun Shishir suddenly asked, "How does it compare to the Mu family?" Hearing this, Gong Jia could not help but reveal a hint of contempt in his eyes as he sneered. How can a mere Mu family be placed on the same level as the Gong family? Yun Shishir's lips twitched. Shao Jia's enmity towards the Mu family ran deep. Moreover, when he said this, his expression was as cold as it could get. She suddenly remembered something. Mu Yaja said that he would be back early today to have dinner with everyone. She did not react in time and invited Shao Jie home for dinner. It's over. She felt that this was going to be a very tense dinner. Shao Jie was rather dissatisfied with Mu Yaja as his brother-in-law. Even if he called him brother-in-law, it was only because of her. Now, it was really awkward. The car drove back to Shangdi Walk. When Gong Jia and Yun Shishir reached home and opened the door, they saw the two little munchkins playing games in the living room after school. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Yu Yu turned his head and saw Gong Jia standing next to his mother. A row of frowns instantly formed on his forehead as he found it extremely strange. "Uncle, what brings you here?" Gong Jia said calmly, "The northwest wind." Yu Yu was speechless. He was left speechless by this joke. When Xiao Yichen saw him, he was also stunned for a moment. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "Uncle, are you here to freeload dinner?" Gong Jia said shamelessly, "Yeah. On the way here, I heard from your mommy that Chef Yu Yu's culinary skills are comparable to a 5-star chef. I'm here because I want to try your cooking skills and see if they're as top-notch as the rumors say." Xiao Yichen was speechless. There were even people who shamelessly described freeloading in such a refreshing and refined manner. The corner of Yu Yu's eyes twitched violently again. Had he been betrayed by his mommy? He didn't want to cook a feast tonight. Yun Shishir poured a glass of water and asked Gong Jia to sit down. Then, she inched over to Yu Yu and coaxed, "Yu Yu, why don't you make an exception tonight and show off your cooking skills to your uncle?" "Mommy, you're cheating. It's not my turn to be on duty tonight." While Yun Shishir was resting, Yu Yu was relieved to be on duty during the new year. He and Mommy took turns to be on duty and did all the housework. Today, it was his turn to rest. Mommy wanted to coax him into cooking again, so he refused. Other than Mommy, he wasn't interested in cooking for anyone else. Moreover, showing off his culinary skills was extremely boring. Not everyone wanted to eat his cooking, but he was willing to do so. Cooking was very tiring, okay? Picking vegetables, buying vegetables, picking vegetables, washing vegetables, cutting vegetables, stir-frying vegetables, arranging dishes. Chapter 2072. Yu Yu sat lazily on the sofa and refused to move. Yun Shishir tried to coax him for a long time, but he remained unmoved. Gong Jia provoked coldly, "Sister, you said that he knows how to cook. Are you bragging?" Before Yun Shishir could say anything, Yu Yu, who was standing at the side, coldly snorted. It was clear that he would not fall for his trick. "Cut it out. Goading doesn't work on me." Gong Jia gritted his teeth. This kid was really smart and crafty. Yun Shishir was amused. Why did this uncle and niece seem to have known each other for a long time? Their way of communication was so unique. But what she didn't know was that the two of them had known each other for a long time. At one point, they were sworn enemies who were secretly competing with each other. In the past, before Gong Jia and Yu Yu met, the two of them disliked each other. Until later, when they met, there was still some tension between them. Yun Shishir pleaded, "Yu Yu, please. Mommy promised your uncle to have dinner with us tonight. Mommy's cooking is not good. Uncle is afraid that he will get food poisoning after eating Mommy's cooking. Uncle is very pitiful. He's all alone and has no one to cook for him. Just be nice." Gong Jia's lips twitched when he heard this. Yu Yu smiled when he heard this. Then, he looked meaningfully at Gong Jia and said arrogantly, "Since uncle is all alone, I'll reluctantly agree to Mommy's request." Reluctantly? Why was it so difficult to get a free meal from him? "Mu Yichen." Yu Yu suddenly stood up and called out as if he was summoning a mythical beast. Xiao Yichen quivered. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. He looked up warily. "What? Go grocery shopping with me?" "No." He knew that something bad was going to happen. When they needed to run errands, he was dragged into it. As for other good things, he had never thought of him. What a heartless brother. Let's go. Yu Yu grabbed Xiao Yichen's arm and walked out the door with their arms around each other's shoulders. Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she watched the two children leave. When she turned around, she saw that Gong Jia had stood up and walked into the back garden. He stood in the garden and stared at the garden full of Chinese roses, his eyes widening slightly. Rose? Yes. Gong Jia murmured, did you plant all these yourself? Yes. Yun Shishir walked to his side and followed his line of sight. Her gaze was gentle as she said, I usually take care of these Chinese roses. How about it? Does it look good? Gong Jia's expression softened a little in an instant. Yes, my mother loved Chinese roses the most when she was alive. I still remember the small flower bed behind the house I lived in at that time was filled with roses. When my mother was free, she liked to take care of those flowers. He walked over slowly and squatted down as if he had lost something. He reached out to touch a Chinese rose and frowned sadly. Since I was young, I've always dreamed of having my own backyard and planting many Chinese roses. I don't know if it's a genetic preference. I've planted roses and orchids, but in the end, I still liked Chinese roses the most. Hence, I decided to plant all Chinese roses in the garden. However, my culinary skills are not as good as hers. The Chinese roses that I planted will not look as good as the ones that she took care of. No. Gong Jia shook his head. I think it's very beautiful. Chapter 2073. In his memory, Mu Qingqing had beautiful hair that reached her waist. In her free time, she would tie her hair up gently with a silk ribbon and take care of the flower garden with her tools. Usually, she loved to study the art of flowers. After leaving the Mu family, she used her skills to work in a flower garden. Her craftsmanship was much appreciated. He also had quite a reputation in that field. The more Gong Jia looked at these flowers, the sadder he felt. The scariest thing about people was their memories. The more beautiful the memories were, the more painful it was to lose them. The scene in his memory suddenly shattered. When Gong Jia came back to his senses, he was shocked to find that a tear had fallen from the corner of his eye. Why was he crying? He had never shed a tear in more than 10 years. He had thought that his heart had become as hard as a rock. Little did he know that he still had a soft spot in his heart. Yun Shishir looked at him helplessly. Looking at his slightly wet eyes, she hurriedly wiped them away for him. Shao Jia. Gong Jia's lips curled into a smile. Beautiful scenery doesn't last forever. Yun Shishir was stunned and sighed in her heart. Yes, that's why we have to cherish what we have now. I'm so tired. Xiao Yichen pushed open the door, panting like a cow. He huffed and puffed as he placed his hands full of vegetables on the shelf. Yu Yu came back from grocery shopping. When he opened the door, he saw Gong Jia sitting at the table, playing with the spoils of war that he had won from the game that day. He was playing with the toys developed by Lizhi Holdings with great interest. Yu Yu glanced at him and saw that Gong Jia had taken apart the toys and was studying them curiously. Uncle is still a child at heart, he said coldly. Yun Shishir popped her head out of the kitchen and smiled. Is Master Yu Yu back? Yes, I'm back. I've already cooked the rice. Yun Shishir said eagerly. Yu Yu waved his hand like a general. You may leave. Leave the rest to me. All right. Yu Yu carried the vegetables into the kitchen. She quickly picked, washed, and cut the vegetables. Half an hour later, Gong Jia heard clanging sounds coming from the kitchen. The sound of the kitchen knife hitting the chopping board was so loud that it attracted his attention. He walked to the kitchen door in admiration and saw Yu Yu standing on a small stool. She held a kitchen knife in one hand and pressed the onions with the other, cutting them into pieces. -0-, the scene of little Munchkin cooking was too shocking. His mouth formed an O shape. My Yu Yu is awesome. She didn't expect that the phrase, extraordinary culinary skills was definitely not nonsense. He gave her full marks for her skill in cutting vegetables. Soon, all the vegetables were cut and distributed according to their types. Yu stood in front of the gas stove, lit the fire, heated the pot, and started to stir-fry the vegetables. The pot was very heavy. His strength was limited, so he had to use both hands to hold the pot. It looked a little clumsy, but after a burst of flames, Yu stir-fried with a spoon of oil and a spoon of seasoning, the aroma of the vegetables wafted out. Gong Jia was stunned. When Mu Yaja returned home, Yu had just placed the last of the hot soup on the table. He had just opened the door when he saw Gong Jia sitting elegantly at the table, smiling at him. Brother-in-law is back. Mu Yaja's face immediately turned cold. Why was he here? Chapter 2074. Brother-in-law is so heartless. Can't I be here as a guest? Gong Jia smiled elegantly, but his eyes were full of provocation. Yun Shishir had just finished trimming the plants and walked into the living room. When she saw him, she smiled and greeted him, "It's time to eat." Yu also took off his apron and hung it on the door. "Daddy, it's time to eat." Mu Yaja walked over slowly and sat down beside Yun Shishir. Yun Shishir scooped out the rice and said, "Come, let's eat." "Shao Jia, try Yu's cooking." "Okay." She took out a clean pair of chopsticks and handed them out. The two little guys took the chopsticks and said, "Oh," in unison, but neither of them took the initiative to eat. Yu's dark eyes turned and looked at Gong Jia and Mu Yaja curiously. These two were sworn enemies, weren't they? Now that they were sitting at the same table, who knew if they would start fighting? They probably wouldn't. After all, they had to care about their mommy's reputation. Yu smiled. Just as he was about to take a sip of his drink, he saw Gong Jia elegantly pick up a piece of meat and put it in Mu Yaja's bowl with a friendly expression. "Brother-in-law, have some meat." Mu Yaja was a little surprised by his eagerness. He couldn't help but feel a little nervous and stare at him suspiciously. Pfft, Yu almost spat out his drink. Fortunately, he was elegant and managed to hold it in. He coughed a few times. Yun Shishir frowned and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Yu wiped the corner of his mouth gently with a tissue. Did his uncle take the wrong medicine today? Yun Shishir looked at Yu and Xiao Yichen with a reproachful look. She turned to Gong Jia and said, "Yu's curry beef is delicious. Xiao Jia, do you want to try it?" "Okay." Without waiting for Gong Jia to eat, Yun Shishir enthusiastically picked up a piece of beef with her chopsticks and held it in her hands to prevent the juice from dripping into the other bowls. She brought the beef to his mouth and encouraged him, "Try it." Gong Jia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was this little idiot still treating him like a child? When he was young, he would be obedient when he ate. She chased after him and chased after him. Sometimes, she wanted to point a gun at his head and watch him eat obediently. Yun Shishir was much gentler. When Xiao Jia refused to eat, she would patiently feed him a mouthful of meat and a mouthful of rice with a spoon. Gong Jia especially enjoyed being fed. Hence, every time they ate, he liked to stick to her and sit beside her. Like a little swallow, he would open his mouth and chirp away. He was willful and adorable at the same time. Yun Shishir indulged him and patiently fed him mouthful by mouthful. This was how Gong Jia developed his arrogant and willful personality. It was only after he returned to the Gong family that he slowly corrected his habit of wanting others to feed him. Gong Jia wanted to do it himself, but when he saw Mu Yaja looking at him with hostility, he opened his mouth and allowed Yun Shishir to feed him the juicy and tender beef. Gong Jia took a bite and his eyes lit up. He was clearly surprised. The heat of the beef was just right. The meat was tender and chewy, and the soup was delicious. It was neither salty nor bland. Chapter 2075. As Gong Jia ate, his eyes scanned the dining table. Suddenly, his gaze landed on a plate of fragrant red braised pork. Yun Shishir saw that he was staring at the red braised pork, so she diligently picked up a piece of meat and brought it to his mouth. Gong Jie took a bite and tasted it contentedly. The delicious taste made his soul feel like it had been sublimated. He was happy, but the other two little guys were a little gloomy, especially Mu Yaja. At this moment, he was like a child who had been neglected. He placed his chopsticks on the table in a fit of pique and looked at Yun Shusher with displeasure. Didn't this woman think that she was being a little biased? This man had hands and feet. He was an adult, so why did he still need someone to feed him? He was like a 5-year-old child. He suddenly felt a little unbalanced. She was clearly his woman, but she gave others the feeling that she and Gong Jie were showing off their affection. He was embarrassed. Yu, who was standing beside him, also felt a little apprehensive. Mommy had rarely fed him all his life. Especially him, who matured very early. He knew how to eat by himself when he was 3 years old. He never needed anyone to supervise him or carefully feed him. This Gong Jie, on the other hand, sat there like a big boss. He rarely touched his chopsticks. Yun Shusher was feeding him gently. This intimate action undoubtedly stung the eyes of the father and sons beside them. Especially Xiao Yichen, who was the most displeased. Even mommy had never fed him before. Now, he could only watch helplessly as Gong Jie enjoyed such VIP treatment. He couldn't help but feel a little dejected. He and Yu looked at each other and suddenly put down their chopsticks. The two little guys walked over to Yun Shusher, one on each side, and gently tugged at her sleeves. Yun Shusher turned her head. Just as she was feeling puzzled, she saw the two little guys sandwiching her in the middle. At the same time, they raised their palm-sized faces, opened their mouths wide, and made greedy sounds. Ah! Yu opened her mouth and looked at her expectantly, like a little swallow waiting to be fed by an old swallow. She opened her mouth and looked extremely eager. Xiao Yichen opened his mouth as well. Ah, he said softly and cutely. He sounded like he was acting coquettishly, as if he was waiting for her to pamper him. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What are you doing? I want mommy to feed me too. Xiao Yichen acted coquettishly and stared at her with his watery eyes. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She held back her laughter and rebuked, "Go back to your seat and pick it up yourself. Mommy is biased." Yu complained pitifully, as if she had done something evil. You feed uncle, but you don't feed us. Biased. Mu Yichen nodded as well. That's right. The meat fed by mommy was more fragrant. Mommy, hey. Hey. They were actually throwing a tantrum. Yun Shusher was helpless, but she couldn't do anything about the two of them. She could only pick up a piece of meat for each of them and stuff it into their mouths. The two little guys chewed with their mouths full and narrowed their eyes as they snickered. Even though they had gotten their way, they couldn't bear to leave and seemed to want to cling on to her. Yu and Xiao Yichen were secretly competing with each other as they chewed with all their might. Xiao Yichen swallowed first, opened his mouth again, and looked at her. Ah! It was obvious that he wanted her to feed him. Was he asking for her affection? Chapter 2076. The moment Yun Shusher saw him acting coquettishly and pestering her to feed him, she immediately understood what was going on. This little fellow was jealous. He must have been jealous when he saw her feeding Gong Jie so intimately. Hence, he pestered her to experience the privilege of being fed. Naturally, she knew what her own child was thinking. Moreover, Yu had always been an obedient and sensible child. He would always hold his own bowl and put food into his own bowl. He was very independent. At this moment, he was probably envious of the Gong Jie. What about Mu Yichen? He was purely following behind Yu to join in the fun. Yun Shusher was almost blushing from how adorable the two little fellows were. Seeing that she was not moving, Mu Yichen tugged at her sleeve pitifully and urged her eagerly. He started to act coquettishly in a soft voice. Mommy. Hey. Hey. Yun Shusher could not resist the two little fellows pestering. She picked up a piece of meat with her chopsticks and put it into Yu Yu's mouth. Only then did the latter feel satisfied. Just as she was about to feed Xiao Yichen, Mu Yaja spoke unhappily. Go back to your seat obediently. As he spoke, Mu Yaja pointed to his seat. He had no one to feed him, yet these two little fellows still wanted to enjoy it. When Mu Yichen heard this, he pursed his lips unhappily. However, he had always obeyed his father's orders and had never disobeyed him. He obediently returned to his seat. Daddy is a bully. Xiao Yichen muttered to Mu Yaja, obviously unhappy with him. Mu Yaja's gaze froze. However, Mu Yichen did not dare to say a word. He picked up a piece of food and blinked pitifully before he obediently ate his food. Yu Yu also returned to his seat. He felt unhappy, but after thinking about it, he did enjoy some special treatment. Hence, he felt much better and obediently ate his food. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, chuckled softly. She glanced at Mu Yaja with a pair of smiling eyes. She had a feeling that the man was jealous, too. Otherwise, why would he be so cold and even argue with the children? Why are you so fierce? Yun Shishir asked even though she already knew the answer. Mu Yaja snorted and only said, don't spoil these two guys too much. They're already so old. It's not like they don't have the ability to work and can eat by themselves. Why do they need someone to feed them? There was a hidden meaning in his words. He glanced at Gong Jia coldly from the corner of his eyes. He was probably implying that the man sitting at the table was just like Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen. They were still huge babies and needed others to feed them. Gong Jia seemed to be deliberately provoking him. He smiled and said, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen are still young. When I was 8 years old, my sister still chased after me to feed me. These words were provoking him. Mu Yaja's gaze turned cold. He glanced at Yun Shishir with dissatisfaction. Obviously, he did not believe him. Is what he said true? Yes. Yun Shishir smiled and said, Xiao Jia was especially delicate when he was young. When he was 8 or 9 years old, he still didn't eat by himself, so I usually fed him. Yu Yu was stunned when he heard this. Uncle, you're so delicate. Gong Jia curled his lips. Yes. Xiao Yichen was so envious. Mu Yaja's expression did not look good. This Gong Jia was obviously provoking him. He felt very unhappy. Chapter 2077. Here, I'll feed you. Have some meat. Mu Yaja turned his face away in disdain. No. At the thought of how she had gently fed Gong Jia meat earlier, Mu Yaja felt an indescribable sense of awkwardness in his heart. He could not spit it out, nor could he swallow it. It was as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat. He wasn't so delicate that he needed someone to feed him. Ever since he was young, he had been different from other willful children. Ever since he was 3 years old, he had learned how to use a spoon to eat obediently while sitting on a high stool. He didn't need anyone to coax him or lie to him. He didn't make a fuss. He ate quietly and obediently. Normally, children of this age would need adults to carry them in their arms and coax them while feeding them. But he didn't. He had liked to be independent since he was young. He liked to rely on himself for everything. This trait was inherited from Xiao Yichen. The children of the Mu family had always been mature and agile. It wasn't enough, looking at how intimate Yun Shishir and Gong Jia were, he felt that this scene was an eyesore. Gong Jia laughed and teased, Sister, look at brother-in-law. Is he jealous? Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows and glanced at Mu Yaja. Jealous? I'm not happy to see you feed me. Are you serious? Yun Shishir smiled. Our man probably won't be jealous over such a trivial matter. Mu Yaja glared at her and glanced at Gong Jia coldly from the corner of his eyes. He snorted coldly, but the meaning behind it was inexplicable. Gong Jia's thin lips curved into a smile. Suddenly, he scooped up a piece of meat with a spoon and brought it to Mu Yaja's mouth with a smile. He coaxed, brother-in-law, come, I'll feed you some meat. Get lost. Mu Yaja glared at him and turned his face away in disdain. However, how could Gong Jia allow him to refuse? She didn't even bother to look at his expression and directly shoved the spoonful into his mouth. Yun Shishir. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were also dumbfounded. Oh my god. Mu Yaja did not expect Gong Jie to make such a bold move. He frowned coldly and looked up to see Gong Jie's extremely kind smile, especially the mischievous expression on his face. His eyes contained a hint of provocation. He was extremely two-faced. Brother-in-law, is it delicious? Gong Jie was smiling on the surface, but the curvature of his lips was a fake smile. It was just the movement of his muscles, and the smile did not reach his eyes. Mu Yaja took a bite of the meat expressionlessly and chewed viciously, as if what he was chewing was not ordinary beef, but real Gong Jie. The two men, one with a smile on his face and the other with a cold expression, looked at each other. The air was filled with sparks of electricity. Thank you, brother-in-law. Gong Jie smiled casually. You're welcome, brother-in-law. The air was suddenly silent. The atmosphere instantly turned cold. Gong Jie and Mu Yaja, one with fire and one with ice, separated the world into two extremes. Yun Shishir was sandwiched in the middle. She felt as if she was in the realm of fire and water. She was so nervous that her heart was on tenterhooks. She was afraid that these two tall and strong men would quarrel at the dining table. In fact, it was not impossible.